Chapter 3653. First the Een Demon Land, then the Heavy Region, then the Death Glacier, and now the Land of the Buried Gods. What exactly do they want to do? Could it be that the four forbidden areas have something they want? At the same time, Qin Feiyang and the White-Eyed Wolf were also surprised. What method did the middle-aged man in black use before? He actually plunged this place into endless darkness. The most important thing was, this wasn't ordinary darkness, but darkness that could really cover everything. They didn't have the ability to do such a thing. The middle-aged man in black took a step forward and landed in front of Qin Feiyang and the White-Eyed Wolf, saying, "This is not a place you haven't set foot in, quickly leave." Leave? Two people and a wolf looked at each other. What did he mean? So many people and beasts stepped into the land of the buried gods, but he didn't care about them. Why did he want to drive them away? The middle-aged man in black said, "Listen to me. Continuing to enter the land of the buried gods won't do you any good." His gaze was extremely deep. Qin Feiyang pointed to the surrounding people and beasts and asked, "Then why can they come to the land of the buried gods?" "They're different." The middle-aged man in black was silent for a while and said, "What's different?" Qin Feiyang frowned. Could it be that Madman's guess was true? This person stopped Madman not to kill him, but to drive him away. "There's no reason. If I tell you to leave, then leave." The middle-aged man in black sounded a little impatient. "What a joke. If you tell us to leave, then we'll leave?" The White-Eyed Wolf sneered and shouted, "Sword of Thanatos, help this brother." Clang. Accompanied by a loud noise, the Sword of Thanatos with a destructive edge swept out from Qin Feiyang's body and fell in front of the White-Eyed Wolf. "Don't be stubborn." The middle-aged man in black shouted angrily. Qin Feiyang's eyes flashed slightly as he looked at the middle-aged man in black and said, "Although I don't know why you want to stop us, I have to go to the depths of the land of the buried gods. If you insist on blocking the way, then don't blame me for being ruthless." As soon as he finished speaking, a horsetail whisk appeared from his body. The appearance of two sovereign divine weapons made the black-robed middle-aged man's expression turn extremely ugly. The ferocious beasts under his command were frightened out of their wits. Who was this person? He actually had two sovereigns' divine weapons. In the meantime, Madman also looked at Qin Feiyang in surprise. "I must go. Didn't this guy not want to enter the land of the buried gods? Why was his attitude so firm now? Why won't you listen to my advice?" The black-clothed middle-aged man roared, and the third eye between his eyebrows suddenly closed, and the world once again fell into endless darkness. Danger once again engulfed them. Furthermore, it was even more dangerous than before. "With us here, you won't be allowed to act rashly." The cold snorts of the Sword of Thanatos and the horsetail whisk resounded in the darkness. Clang. Accompanied by the sound of a violent collision, the world returned to daylight. Qin Feiyang and the others looked over and saw the black-robed middle-aged man standing in the void in the distance. His face was slightly pale, and the third eye between his brows had already disappeared. Moreover, it was bleeding profusely. Obviously, this was caused by the Sword of Thanatos and the horsetail whisk. The White-Eyed Wolf murmured, "It turns out that it has something to do with his third eye." The black-clothed middle-aged man glanced at the two men and the wolf. Suddenly, he took a step forward, and a surge of law force emerged, instantly disappearing into the depths of the central region. "What? The supreme profound of the law of time, instant time!" The White-Eyed Wolf exclaimed. "The law of destruction, the law of time." This person actually mastered two of the supreme profound of the law of time. What does he mean? Madman frowned. Indeed, he didn't feel any killing intent from this person. But why did he want to stop them? Lord Divine Beast actually escaped? Seeing this, the ferocious beasts under the black-clothed middle-aged man's command were filled with disbelief. When they came back to their senses, they also turned around and fled frantically. It's indeed terrifying. The surrounding humans looked at Qin Feiyang and the White-Eyed Wolf with admiration. This was the first time they saw the beasts of the land of the buried gods so frightened. "Old Qin, what did you mean by that?" Madman turned his head to look at Qin Feiyang and asked in confusion. "What did I say?" Qin Feiyang retracted his gaze and looked at Madman suspiciously. It's that sentence that you have to go, Madman said. The white-eyed wolf also flew over with the sword of Thanatos and looked at Qin Feiyang in confusion. Qin Feiyang pondered for a moment, looked up at the central region, frowned, and said, I don't know why, but when I entered the land of the buried gods, I felt like something was calling me. What? Madman and the white-eyed wolf were shocked. And this feeling is very familiar. It's like meeting a family member whose blood is thicker than water, Qin Feiyang whispered. His brows were also filled with confusion. He had never been to the land of the buried gods, so why would he have such a feeling? Madman pondered for a moment and said in surprise, Isn't this the same as when I entered the Een Demon Land? The Een Demon Land? The white-eyed wolf glanced at Madman. Back then, Madman not only obtained the power of the blood demon in the Een Demon Land, but he also obtained the ability to transform. Could it be that there was also a powerful ability hidden in the land of the buried gods, waiting for Qin Feiyang to obtain it? But what was going on? Madman felt a familiar call in the Een Demon Land. Qin Feiyang also felt a familiar call in the land of the buried gods. They all came from the lower realms, so how did they get involved with these forbidden lands? Qin Feiyang's eyes flashed. He put away the sword of Thanatos and the horsetail whisk, looked at Madman and the white-eyed wolf, and said, No matter what, we have to enter the central region. Let's go. The 2 men and 1 wolf immediately entered the central region. The moment they entered the central region, the feeling of calling Qin Feiyang became even stronger. Did you hear that? We have to enter the central region. They are really domineering. What a joke! If I had their strength and so many sovereign weapons, I would also dare to say such a thing. It's better to stop dreaming. But then again, the Een Demon Land, the heavy region, and the core region of the Death Glacier, have they entered it before? They should have entered it before. Otherwise, why would the dragons and phone people appear? Sigh, I really want to see what the core regions of these 3 forbidden lands look like. Let's not talk about this first. Let's hurry up and follow them. Maybe this time we will be lucky enough to see the true appearance of the core region of the land of the buried gods. Everyone formed a group and chased after Qin Feiyang and the others. To this, Qin Feiyang, Madman, and the white-eyed wolf no longer paid attention to them, nor did they hide their identities. In any case, they had already done what they needed to do. If they continued to court death, then it was not their fault. Along the way, they finally arrived at the inner region. Qin Feiyang, Madman, and the white-eyed wolf also discovered something unusual. The berserk beasts of the land of the buried gods seemed to be a well-trained organization. They were scattered in various places and were led by various beast kings. They specialized in hunting humans who entered the land of the buried gods, especially the berserk beasts in the depths of the central region. Each one of them was extremely powerful. The various beast kings that ruled over a region had even grasped the highest profoundness. If it weren't for Qin Feiyang, Madman, and the white-eyed wolf clearing the way in front, those who followed behind wouldn't have been able to get close to the inner region. And now, the people gathered at the back were already more than 10,000 people, forming a dense black mass. The momentum was also quite scary. Get lost! The white-eyed wolf slapped out with his paw, blasting away a beast king in front of him, and raised his head to look at the inner region. The inner region was still an endless stretch of mountains and rivers. Giant peaks stood in great numbers and ancient trees towered into the sky. Before entering the inner region, they could clearly sense the terrifying berserk beasts. Why do I feel that this is the base camp of the berserk beasts? Madman frowned. This is the base camp of our Sky Cloud Realm's berserk beasts. Especially the berserk beasts in the inner region. Any berserk beast that comes out can kill us in seconds. A black-clothed old man stepped forward in front of Qin Feiyang, Madman, and the white-eyed wolf. Looking at the inner region, his old eyes were full of fear. It really is? The 2 men and the wolf were stunned, a little surprised. But it's really strange. The black-clothed old man glanced around suspiciously. What's strange? The 2 men and the wolf looked at the old man suspiciously. You don't know? Not only the border region, but the central region also has a divine beast overseeing it. Moreover, there is more than one divine beast, a total of 4 divine beasts overseeing the north, south, east, and west. It is also because of these 4 divine beasts that no one has been able to step into the inner region since ancient times. But now why don't I see any traces of them? The black-clothed old man's old face was full of confusion. 4 divine beasts. Qin Feiyang, madman, and the white-eyed wolf looked at each other in dismay. Moreover, it is said that they all have sovereign divine weapons, but no one has seen them with their own eyes. Perhaps it is because no one has the ability to force them to take out their sovereign divine weapons, because there are rumors that they are all supreme experts who have mastered the 6 great profound meanings. Another middle-aged man stepped forward and looked at the inner region. What? Mastered the 6 great profound meanings? The 2 men and the wolf looked at each other, their eyes full of shock. Weren't these existences on the same level as the patriarchs of the various forbidden regions? Terrifying. It seemed that they had underestimated the danger level of the land of the buried gods. If they hadn't broken through to the perfection sovereign realm, and if they didn't have sovereign divine weapons, not to mention entering the inner region, it would be difficult for them to even pass the black-clothed old man's trial. As expected, none of the 4 forbidden regions of the sky cloud realm could be underestimated. The black-clothed old man continued. Besides the 4 divine beasts overseeing the central region, there is another barrier that ordinary people like us can't cross. What barrier? Qin Feiyang, madman, and the white-eyed wolf were stunned as they looked at the old man suspiciously. It's the river that lies below. The black-clothed old man pointed at the ground below and said. The 2 men and the wolf looked down and saw a wide river between the inner region and the central region. It was like a giant python that extended to the ends of the earth on both sides. The river was calm and the water was very clear. It looked like an ordinary river, and didn't give them any sense of danger. It is said that this river surrounds the entire inner region, and is a natural barrier. However, you must not be deceived by its appearance. Although it looks calm and ordinary, it is actually filled with killing intent. This old man has been in the land of the buried gods for tens of thousands of years, but I have never seen anyone who can cross this river. The black-clothed old man said in a deep voice. Chapter 36:54. Is it that powerful? The white-eyed wolf looked at the river and expressed his doubts. There was also a nether river in the inner area of the heavy domain, but the difference was, the nether river didn't look simple at first glance, but the river in front of them was really no different from an ordinary river. Seeing that Qin Feiyang and the white-eyed wolf didn't believe it, the old man in black lowered his head and pondered for a while. Suddenly his eyes lit up. He stretched out his hand, and a mountain of about 10,000 feet below rose from the ground. Look! As the old man in black waved his hand, the mountain suddenly cut through the sky and flew toward the inner area with a deafening sound of wind and thunder. 2 people and a wolf looked at the mountain suspiciously. Boom! Just as the mountain entered the sky above the river, accompanied by a loud bang, the mountain directly shattered in the void. What? 2 people and a wolf suddenly changed color. The old man in black said in a deep voice. As you can see, there is an invisible force above the river. Anyone who enters the river will be obliterated by this force. Sure enough, there is a hidden killing intent. Qin Feiyang murmured. The white-eyed wolf asked. What about the river? This river is not simple. The old man in black took another stone and threw it into the river. As soon as it touched the water, a destructive aura emerged and the stone immediately turned into powder. Even the river contains such a terrible destructive power? Qin Feiyang and the white-eyed wolf looked at each other. If they didn't know in advance and directly entered the sky above the river, wouldn't it be tantamount to suicide? Thinking of this, they couldn't help but feel a lingering fear. Elder, thank you. Qin Feiyang looked at the old man in black gratefully. It's fate to meet. The old man in black waved his hand and smiled. Qin Feiyang smiled. Suddenly, he seemed to think of something and asked, Elder, you have been in the land of buried gods for so many years. I wonder if you know these 2 people? After saying that, Qin Feiyang waved his hand and the shadows of Yin Xiang and the masked Azura emerged. These 2, the black-clothed old man sized up Yin Xiang and Qin Feiyang. Suddenly he looked at Qin Feiyang and nodded. This old man has seen you before. Where did you see him? Qin Feiyang hurriedly asked. I've seen it a few times in the border region and a few times in the central region. Furthermore, every single time, they would be in a hurry. The old man in black said. In a hurry? Hearing this, Qin Feiyang couldn't help but frown. He had seen it more than once in the border region and the central region. In other words, Yun Xiang and Yi Zichen often roamed the land of the buried gods. The fact that they were in such a hurry meant that Yun Xiang and Qin Li's destination wasn't somewhere in the border region or the central region. Could it be that they were really heading for the core area? These two left quite a deep impression on this old man. The old man in black said again. Impressed? Qin Feiyang was slightly taken aback. The old man in black nodded. After recalling for a moment, he nodded. Yes, because there is a very strange phenomenon on them. What strange phenomenon? The white-eyed wolf was suspicious. They are very strong. Once, this old man saw with my own eyes that there were several peak sovereigns lurking in the dark to ambush them. But in the end, these people were easily killed by them. But this is nothing. The strangest thing is that the beasts in the land of the buried gods don't seem to attack them. The old man in black frowned. What? Don't attack them? The two men and one wolf were shocked. One must know. Even if they revealed their true identity, the beasts in the land of the buried gods would often run out to attack them. It could be seen how ferocious the beasts here were. But unexpectedly, they didn't attack Yin Xiang and the Master Jura. This matter was worth pondering. Madman turned his head to look at the old man in black and asked, Are you sure about this? I'm basically sure. The old man in black nodded. Madman took a deep breath and looked at Qin Feiyang and the white-eyed wolf. It seems that the situation with Yin Xiang and the Master Jura isn't as simple as we thought. Maybe the god beasts in the border and central regions know them. The white-eyed wolf frowned and looked at Madman. You mean that the god beasts in the border region didn't attack you because of some scheme, but because of Yin Xiang and the Master Jura? Madman nodded. The old man in black pondered. It's also possible that they have something that the beasts are afraid of. That's impossible. Let's not talk about ordinary beasts for now. The god beasts in the border and central regions have all grasped the 6 profound meanings, and even have sovereign divine weapons. With such strength, what else could make them afraid? Moreover, this Yun Xiang, as far as I know, doesn't have a sovereign divine weapon. So there must be another reason. Qin Feiyang shook his head. How do you know he doesn't have a sovereign divine weapon? The old man in black was suspicious. Because we know each other. Qin Feiyang's eyes flickered. If Yin Xiang really had a sovereign divine weapon, then he wouldn't have been so low-key when hunting the Feng people in the region. If he had a sovereign divine weapon, he wouldn't have escaped with the help of the god beasts in the border region when Madman was following them. Then what could be the reason? The white-eyed wolf was puzzled. There are 2 possibilities. The first one, as you said before, Yun Xiang and the Master Jura know the god beasts here. The second possibility is their master. Their master is most likely an extremely powerful existence. Even the ferocious beasts here are afraid of him. Qin Feiyang's eyes flickered. If that's the case, then this matter is even more interesting. The white-eyed wolf bared his teeth. Qin Feiyang let out a long breath and glanced at the river. Let's think of a way to enter the inner region first. White-eyed wolf, you go and try. Why don't you go? The white-eyed wolf shrank his neck and said angrily. What? There are times when you're afraid. Madman looked at him with a teasing look. Are you kidding me? Why would I be afraid? Wait. The white-eyed wolf smiled proudly and flew to the edge of the river. He raised his claws and reached into the void ahead. Although he said he wasn't afraid, he was still quite nervous. At the same time, Qin Feiyang and Madman also looked at the white-eyed wolf nervously. Although the white-eyed wolf's body had reached the sovereign level, this was one of the 4 forbidden areas after all. Anything could happen. Boom. Just as the white-eyed wolf's claws reached into the sky above the river, a terrifying destructive force immediately surged out. The white-eyed wolf screamed in pain, and his claws were instantly shattered. This scene scared the white-eyed wolf so much that he quickly retreated. That destructive power also quickly disappeared, like a flash in the pan. No way. Qin Feiyang and Madman looked at each other. Even with the strength of a sovereign, he couldn't withstand the destructive force above the river? Coming back to their senses, Qin Feiyang quickly took out a divine life pill and threw it to the white-eyed wolf. Then he looked at the sky above the river. Fortunately, the black-clothed old man and the others had followed them all the way. Otherwise, they would have definitely rushed in. Without any preparation, facing this sudden destructive force, even the sovereign-level weapon wouldn't be able to protect them. This meant that the black-clothed old man and the others had indirectly saved their lives. This force seems to be much stronger than before? Suddenly, a murmur sounded from the crowd behind them. Stronger? Qin Feiyang, Madman, and the white-eyed wolf were stunned. They quickly turned their heads and scanned the crowd behind them, asking, "Who was murmuring just now?" Yes, it was me." A skinny middle-aged man raised his hand and looked at Qin Feiyang, Madman, and the white-eyed wolf in panic. "Are you kidding me? We didn't plan to do anything to him. And he's so scared." The white-eyed wolf was speechless. "Isn't it all your fault? You look like a fiend." Madman secretly despised him. "I'm fierce?" A row of black lines appeared on the white-eyed wolf's forehead. "Have you ever seen such a handsome wolf?" Qin Feiyang shook his head and smiled. He looked at the middle-aged man and comforted him. "Brother, don't be nervous. We just want to ask you something." "What is it?" The middle-aged man was suspicious and his expression was still quite flustered. Qin Feiyang said, "You just said that the force above the river is stronger than before. Is this true?" "It seems so." The middle-aged man nodded and explained, "Some time ago, I saw more than a dozen people fighting with a group of fierce beasts here. At that time, there were 2 people who also had the cultivation of a perfect dominator. They were accidentally sent flying above the river." Speaking of this, the middle-aged man looked at the sky above the river bank and couldn't help but frown. He continued, "Although they were killed by the force above the river in the end, they relied on the supreme-level heaven-defying armor and struggled a little." Struggled? Qin Feiyang was stunned. That's right. According to the current situation, even if they have the supreme-level heaven-defying armor, they won't have the chance to struggle at all. They will be destroyed in an instant. Therefore, I judge that the force has strengthened a little, and it should be more than a little," the middle-aged man said. After hearing this, Qin Feiyang, the madman, and the white-eyed wolf once again looked at the sky above the river. With the supreme-level heaven-defying armor, they could still struggle a little. The power wasn't too strong, but now it could actually shatter the white-eyed wolf's claws in an instant? One must know. The white-eyed wolf's current physical body had also reached the supreme level. Logically speaking, it should be able to resist a little like the supreme-level heaven-defying armor. Could it be? The divine beasts in the border area and the central area are playing tricks? Suddenly, the white-eyed wolf raised his eyebrows. The madman said, "In other words, they want to prevent us from entering the inner area? Otherwise, what other reason could explain all this?" The white-eyed wolf snorted coldly. Now, not only did they not see the 4 divine beasts in the central area, even the divine beast in the border area had disappeared without a trace. Even the force above the river had become so much stronger. All kinds of abnormal situations. Didn't it prove that they were here for them? The old man in black advised, "Brother Qin, although we don't know why you have to go, but from the current situation, this old man thinks that you'd better not go in." "That's right. This series of changes is really too strange," the others also advised. "Thank you for your concern. However, a mere force can't stop us. But you guys, you must not follow us anymore," Qin Feiyang said. Why? Everyone was puzzled. Because in the Yin Demon Land, the Heavy Domain Land, and the Death Glacier, such situations have happened, and in the end, none of the people who followed us had a good ending. This is also the reason why we changed our appearance when we entered the border area. I don't want you to follow us to your death. In short, there are many things that you can't understand, nor are they things that you can participate in. If you believe me, turn around and leave now. Qin Feiyang looked at the more than 10,000 people in front of him sincerely and said. Chapter 36:55. For a moment, everyone was silent. Originally, they followed Qin Feiyang and the others because they wanted to enter the inner area to take a look. But now, Qin Feiyang told them to leave quickly. If Qin Feiyang's attitude wasn't good, they might have resented him, but Qin Feiyang's attitude at this moment was full of sincerity. He truly cared for them and protected them. If they still resented him, then they were insensible. Of course we believe Brother Qin's words. After all, Brother Qin, Brother Wolf King, and Brother Madman's character are obvious to all. This old man believes that in today's Tianyan realm, no one values friendship more than you. The old man in black smiled. Thank you for your trust. Qin Feiyang smiled gratefully. No. We should be the ones thanking you, because you are concerned about us. Alright. Everyone, let's not blindly get involved and cause trouble for Brother Qin and the others. The old man in black looked at the people beside him and smiled. That's right. Brother Qin is so concerned about us, we can't not appreciate it. Brother Qin, you must be careful. See you later. Everyone turned around and left one after another. Take care. The black-clothed old man cupped his hands and smiled at Qin Feiyang and the white-eyed wolf. He then turned around and left without looking back. It seems that we are not only infamous, but also have a righteous side. The white-eyed wolf bared his teeth. Of course. I have always been the embodiment of justice. Madman snickered. Shameless. The white-eyed wolf cast a look of disdain on the spot. Let's go. Qin Feiyang smiled faintly. He turned around and walked to the riverbank, scanning the river surface and the void. Clang. A horsetail whisk appeared. Are you confident? Qin Feiyang asked. Of course. Yes. In this world, there aren't many things that can stop a sovereign weapon. The horsetail whisk smiled proudly, and a divine aura rolled out. It swept up the two people and the wolf and flew toward the opposite side. Boom. As soon as they arrived above the river, the destructive force appeared out of nowhere, enveloping them from all directions. However, it was unable to penetrate the defenses of the whisk. The black-robed old man and his group hadn't gone far when they sensed the whisk's aura. They stopped in the air and turned around to look. I really envy them for having sovereign weapons. Yeah. With the help of a sovereign weapon, is there any place you can't go? However, you can't be envious of such things. Everyone shook their heads and laughed. However, just as the horsetail whisk was about to bring Qin Feiyang and the white-eyed wolf into the inner region, there was a loud boom. 5 terrifying divine auras suddenly surged from the inner region and rushed toward Qin Feiyang and the others. What? The expressions of the black-clothed old man and his group changed drastically. These 5 divine auras were the auras of sovereigns. At the same time, Qin Feiyang, the madman, and the white-eyed wolf's expressions changed drastically. They didn't expect the divine auras of 5 sovereign weapons to appear at once. 5 divine auras surged over like an avalanche. Even the horsetail whisk couldn't dodge in time. It could only rush forward. However, how could one sovereign weapon block the divine auras of 5 sovereign weapons? At this moment, the horsetail whisk, along with Qin Feiyang, the madman and the white-eyed wolf, was sent flying back to the central region. They crashed into a mountain like a meteor, causing the mountain to crumble and the earth to crack. They're really preventing them from entering the inner region. What secrets are hidden in the inner region? Why aren't they letting them in? The black-clothed old man and his group were shocked. Bastard! With a roar, the white-eyed wolf rushed out from the shattered ground and stared at the inner region with murderous intent. They've gone too far. Qin Feiyang and the madman also appeared. Their faces were covered in dust, and their bodies were stained with blood. They looked extremely miserable. They raised their heads and looked at the inner region. Their eyes flashed with a shocking cold light. If it wasn't for the horsetail whisk protecting them, they would have died under the 5 divine auras. If you dare to take another step forward, don't blame me for being impolite. A cold voice sounded in the inner region. It was deafening like thunder. It's his voice. The divine beast at the edge of the inner region. The pupils of the black-clothed old man and his group shrank. Today, I really want to see how you're going to be impolite. As Qin Feiyang's voice fell, the sword of the Grim Reaper, the divine jade of the Fire Phoenix, and the divine sword of the fiery phoenix appeared. What? He actually has 4 sovereign weapons. Didn't he say that he only has 3? Wait. It seems to be 5 sovereign weapons. 5? Yes. There's still an ancient castle that hasn't appeared. The black-clothed old man and his group were shocked beyond words. This was the trump card of Qin Feiyang, the golden-winged wolf king, and Madman Mo? Terrifying, truly terrifying. The 4 sovereign weapons once again brought Qin Feiyang, the madman, and the white-eyed wolf into the inner region. For sovereign weapons? Don't even think about entering the inner region. The domineering voice of the divine beast at the edge of the inner region sounded in the inner region. Boom. 5 terrifying auras surged toward Qin Nem like a tide. Then you won't be able to stop them today. The madman sneered. The divine auras of the Horsedale whisked, and the other 3 sovereign weapons turned into an invisible torrent that blasted toward the 5 divine auras. Boom. The void shattered, and the earth caved in. The river below Qin Feiyang and the others also surged with huge waves that flooded in all directions. Fortunately, we retreated in advance. Otherwise, we would have been in deep trouble. Seeing this scene, the black-clothed old man and his group were filled with horror. Such a confrontation and collision was simply not something they could interfere in. The 5 divine auras were very, very powerful. The 4 sovereign weapons, Qin Feiyang, the madman, and the white-eyed wolf were really blocked above the river. They were unable to step into the inner region for a long time. I'll say it one last time. Scram. The divine beast's roar sounded again, shaking all directions. Scram. That depends on whether you have the ability or not. Qin Feiyang said coldly. With a clang, the ancient castle also appeared above their heads. Its divine aura was vast and mighty. The divine auras of the 10 sovereign weapons crazily collided between heaven and earth. The mountains and the earth in all directions were destroyed. The shockwaves spread thousands of miles away. Whether it was the beasts or the black-haired old man and his group, they were all frantically running for their lives. In just a few blinks of an eye, as far as the eye could see, everything had turned into a mess. The inner region. In the deepest part, 2 young men stood at the peak of a mountain and looked up in the direction of the river. It was Yin Xiang, the Master Jura. They really came. The Master Jura sighed. It's all my fault for being too careless. I let Madman track my whereabouts. Yin Xiang shook his head. Don't worry about it. This is fate. Even without you, they would have come here sooner or later. The Master Jura comforted him. You really know how to comfort people. But I'm afraid they are very angry now. Yin Xiang smiled bitterly. The divine beasts of the land of buried gods were not as easy to talk to as the Master Jura. Let's go. Let's go and take a look. The Master Jura patted Yin Xiang's shoulder. Then the 2 flew toward the boundary of the inner region. The boundary. The river had also collapsed. However, the power that permeated the void did not disappear. But now, with the ancient castle and the other 4 sovereign weapons, this power was no longer a threat. However, hiding the divine beasts and the 5 sovereign weapons, their attitude was very firm. They were unwilling to take a step back and let Qin Feiyang and the white-eyed wolf enter the inner region. But the more they were like this, the more Qin Feiyang, the madman, and the white-eyed wolf were unwilling to admit defeat. Why do you have to do this? I can tell you clearly that the land of buried gods will not be your enemy. Hurry up and leave. Don't waste time here. The divine beast's voice sounded again with a helpless tone. Qin Feiyang said indifferently, when the doubts in my heart are solved, we will naturally leave. There is no answer here that you want. The divine beast roared. Whether there is or not, I will know when I go in. Qin Feiyang's eyes sank. He looked at the madman and the white-eyed wolf and said, Senior brother, you should have mastered the super forbidden technique I gave you. Now use it. And the white-eyed wolf, summon the blood-colored wolf between your eyebrows. Okay. The madman and the white-eyed wolf nodded. Ayo. Accompanied by a sky-shaking howl. The mark between the white-eyed wolf's eyebrows shot out a monstrous blood-colored light. A giant blood-colored wolf appeared out of thin air. It was like a giant mountain with a monstrous ferocity. The madman waved his hand and a destructive energy surged out. This was not the law of destruction, but the super forbidden technique, the fire lotus of destruction. As this energy appeared, 10 fire lotuses the size of millstones appeared above the madman. A destructive aura covered the sky and covered the earth. At the same time as the blood-colored wolf and fire lotus of destruction appeared, Qin Feiyang activated his 3,000 clones. Accompanied by dragon roars, the image of a black dragon appeared above each of the clones. The dragon images were all tens of thousands of feet long. It was as if they were condensed from the flames of hell, and emitted a monstrous aura. This was Qin Feiyang's super forbidden technique, the 9 underworlds dragon flame. But this was not the end. The 3,000 clones opened the eye of heaven, and copied the madman's super forbidden technique, the fire lotus of destruction, as well as the giant blood-colored wolf summoned by the white-eyed wolf. In an instant, above the 3,000 clones, 3,000 giant blood-colored wolves, 3,000 fire lotus of destruction, and the 9 underworlds dragon flame appeared. If the giant blood-colored wolf summoned by the white-eyed wolf could be considered a forbidden technique, then there were now 9,000 forbidden techniques. A terrifying aura flooded the area, especially the 3,000 giant blood-colored wolves. They were even more terrifying than the fire lotus of destruction, and the 9 underworlds dragon flame. No one can stop us. The 3,000 clones stared at the inner area and roared in unison. The 9,000 forbidden techniques turned into a torrent that blasted toward the 5 rulers' divine weapons. There was a loud explosion. The 9,000 forbidden techniques, together with the ancient castle and the 5 rulers' divine weapons, finally shattered the 5 rulers' divine weapons. Then the ancient castle took Qin Feiyang, Bing Jioga, and the white-eyed wolf into the inner area. The sword of Thanatos, the horsetail whisk, the fire phoenix divine jade, and the fire phoenix sword also entered the inner area. They floated beside the ancient castle, protecting Qin Feiyang, Bing Jioga, and the white-eyed wolf. One had to know. Now this was not all of Qin Feiyang and the others' trump cards. Because there was still the blood dragon blade. Qin Feiyang did not summon the blood dragon blade now, because he wanted to keep a trump card. There weren't many people who knew that the blood dragon blade was following him. Take the entrance of the Death Glacier as an example. Although there were many people and beasts nearby, when Qi Xiong and Bing Jioga took out the ruler's divine weapons, these people and beasts had already fled, so they did not see the blood dragon blade's betrayal with their own eyes. And now, Qin Feiyang and the others did not know what was going on in the inner area of the land of buried gods, so it was still necessary to keep a trump card. If something really happened, they could still catch the other party off guard. Chapter 3656. The inner area. Everything that he could see was also a mess. However, it was unusually quiet. Qin Feiyang, madman, and the white-eyed wolf stood on the ground and scanned the area in front of them. They didn't see any god beasts or the 5 sovereign weapons at the edge. There were no other beasts either. Of course, no matter how powerful these beasts were, they wouldn't dare to stay in the vicinity. After all, a battle between sovereign weapons had broken out. But why didn't the god beasts and the 5 sovereign weapons appear when they entered the inner area? In fact, even his aura had disappeared. Didn't they risk their lives to stop them? What's the situation? 1 breath, 2 breaths. After a while, the god beasts and the 5 sovereign weapons didn't move. This quiet atmosphere made Qin Feiyang, madman, and the white-eyed wolf shiver. Hey, don't keep silent. Can't you give us some reaction? The white-eyed wolf roared. But the inner area was still dead silent. Could it be that they saw that they couldn't stop us, so they simply gave up and slipped away? Madman frowned. We can't be careless. Qin Feiyang shook his head. The god beast's attitude of stopping them from entering the inner area was very strong. It was impossible for them to give up so easily. But why did they stop them? Madman suddenly asked. Old Qin, is the power that summoned you still there? Yes. And Qin Feiyang nodded and scanned the inner area. It's getting stronger and stronger. I feel that it's not far away. Could it be? The reason why they stopped us from entering the inner area is because of this power that summoned you? Madman was surprised. And, hearing this, Qin Feiyang couldn't help but be stunned. Don't say it. There's really such a possibility. The white-eyed wolf nodded. Perhaps in the inner area, or perhaps in the core area, there was something related to Qin Feiyang. And the owner of the land of the buried gods was afraid of losing this thing, so he did everything possible to stop them. If that's the case, then this thing must be quite valuable. Otherwise, they wouldn't care so much about it? Madmen asked. Of course. Maybe it's a great opportunity for little Qin Zi. The white-eyed wolf said. Qin Feiyang was speechless when he saw the lunatic and the white-eyed wolf talking so seriously. It would be great if that was the case. However, he would only know the truth when he saw it with his own eyes. Clang. However, just when they thought that the divine beasts and the 5 sovereign divine weapons had really left, 5 terrifying auras rushed out from the ground under their feet. The ground collapsed with a loud rumble. Caught off guard, Qin Feiyang's group and the ingrate were blasted flying on the spot. Their bodies cracked open on the spot, and blood gushed out. An aura of death enveloped them. How despicable. A sovereign weapon is actually using sneak attacks. The 2 men and the wolf were furious. At this critical moment, the ancient castle, the Grim Reaper's sword, the Horsetail Whisk, the Fire Phoenix Divine Jade, and the Fire Phoenix Divine Sword reacted. They immediately released a monstrous divine aura to protect Qin Feiyang, the lunatic, and the white-eyed wolf. Their cracked bodies didn't shatter into pieces. At the next moment, the 5 sovereign divine weapons rushed out from the ground and collided with the ancient castle and the other sovereign divine weapons. Another burst of destructive power erupted. Seeing this scene, Qin Feiyang, the lunatic, and the white-eyed wolf couldn't help but break out in cold sweat. Fortunately, the ancient castle and the 5 sovereign divine weapons reacted in time. Otherwise, they would have been destroyed. Even a sneak attack from a supreme expert would be fatal to anyone, let alone a sneak attack from a sovereign divine weapon. Moreover, there were a total of 5 sovereign divine weapons. This action not only made the 2 men and the wolf extremely angry, but even the ancient castle and the other sovereign divine weapons despised them from the bottom of their hearts. You are really a disgrace to us sovereign divine weapons. The ancient castle snorted coldly. The 5 sovereign divine weapons worked together to set up a barrier around Qin Feiyang, the lunatic, and the white-eyed wolf. After ensuring their safety, they attacked the 5 sovereign divine weapons. Qin Feiyang, the lunatic, and the white-eyed wolf immediately consumed the divine life pill, and then looked up at the 5 sovereign divine weapons. Although their bodies were almost torn apart, it was not a big deal to them at the moment. They just needed a little more time to completely recover. Clang. Rumble. The collision of the 10 sovereign divine weapons was really a scene of destruction. Heaven and earth collapsed, and the void turned into chaos. At this moment, whether it was the living beings in the central region or the fierce beasts in the inner region, they were all running for their lives. For example, when the black-robed old man and the others saw the surging aura and the destruction of the mountains and rivers, their faces were filled with fear. Before, when Qin Feiyang and the others entered the inner region, they saw the divine might of the 10 sovereign divine weapons colliding. They had already realized that a world-shaking battle was about to erupt. So at that time, they had already started running for their lives. As expected, the battle had completely erupted. But even if they escaped in advance, their hearts were still filled with fear and uneasiness. Because they couldn't use space-time teleportation divine weapons here, they could only rely on auxiliary divine arts to escape. But the ripples from the battle of the sovereign divine weapons spread far faster than them. If the battle continued, they would die under the ripples sooner or later. In the end, the entire land of the buried gods would be destroyed. All living beings in the land of the buried gods would die a tragic death. In short, if they didn't move the battlefield, the land of the buried gods would face an unprecedented catastrophe. Of course, Qin Feiyang also knew this. Looking at the world in front of him that had turned into chaos, he made a prompt decision. He looked at the 5 sovereign divine weapons and shouted, "Go to the Star River. Be careful," the lunatic secretly warned. Then, the sword of the Grim Reaper, the Horsetail Whisk, the Flaming Phoenix Divine Jade, and the Flaming Phoenix sword tore through the chaos and forcefully dragged the 5 sovereign divine weapons into the Star River. This is the first time I've encountered a sneak attack from a sovereign divine weapon. The lunatic snorted. It's not the first time. Back then, didn't the dragon god sword and the ice dragon sacred sword attack us repeatedly? But this time, we were indeed a little careless. But it also confirmed our guess that there must be some unknown secret hidden in the land of the buried gods. Qin Feiyang's eyes flickered. Otherwise, why would the godly beast try so hard to stop them? It's not just before, it's now. Suddenly, a cold voice sounded. Godly beast. The 2 men and 1 wolf were shocked. Boom. Immediately after, a terrifying divine aura emerged. As soon as this divine aura appeared, Qin Feiyang, the lunatic, and the white-eyed wolf couldn't help but feel a trace of shock. Because this divine aura also originated from the sovereign divine weapon. There were actually 6 sovereign divine weapons hidden in the land of the buried gods? Duh. Accompanied by a series of silent but powerful footsteps, a black-clothed middle-aged man walked out of the chaos. It was the godly beast from the border area. Above the black-clothed middle-aged man's head, a black dagger was suspended. The dagger was about 30 centimeters long, and was completely black. It was suffused with strands of black light, as if it was a demonic creature from the abyss of hell. It was filled with a terrifying baleful aura. Your carelessness at this time was to not let the lunatic and the others go to the Star River. The black-clothed middle-aged man looked at Qin Feiyang, the lunatic, and the white-eyed wolf with murderous intent in his eyes. Is that so? When the 2 men and 1 wolf heard this, a trace of ridicule flashed in their eyes. You're the only one who has a hidden card? But it was hidden very well, and the black-clothed middle-aged man didn't notice. Chapter 3657. The black-clothed middle-aged man waved his hand, and a black dagger appeared in his hand. He looked at Qin Feiyang and the white-eyed wolf coldly and said, "This is the Hellblade. I believe I don't need to tell you what kind of weapon it is." "A dominator weapon," the madman said in a deep voice with a solemn expression. "That's right. You didn't expect me to have a 6th dominator weapon, did you?" The black-clothed middle-aged man sneered. "Sigh." The white-eyed wolf sighed and looked at the black-clothed middle-aged man. "We admit defeat. We will leave the land of buried gods now. Please forgive us. You only admit defeat now. You only want to leave now? You only have a little bit of strength, yet you are so arrogant. If I don't teach you a lesson today, you will never know how high the sky is and how deep the earth is." The black-clothed middle-aged man's eyes turned cold. Accompanied by a loud clang, the Hellblade immediately erupted with a world-destroying aura, and charged toward Qin Feiyang and the white-eyed wolf. "We are arrogant, despotic, and disrespectful?" The white-eyed wolf raised his eyebrows and laughed. "How do you think we are arrogant and despotic? And how do you think we are disrespectful? If we were arrogant and despotic, do you think you would have been able to leave the border region back then? If I'm not wrong, you only had 1 dominator weapon back then. Now that you have 6 dominator weapons, you are preaching to us. Ridiculous." The madman's face was full of mockery. "Who is the ridiculous one? Hellblade, crush their bodies. Let them have a taste of despair." The black-clothed middle-aged man roared. Even now, they still dared to provoke him. They were simply courting death. "The taste of despair? We have experienced this a lot. But you don't have the ability." The madman sneered and turned to look at Qin Feiyang. Qin Feiyang's eyes also flashed with a cold light. If this person didn't make things difficult for them when the white-eyed wolf said to leave the land of buried gods, he would have given this person face. After all, at least it meant that this person had no ill intentions. But now, he even wanted to crush their bodies. From the sound of it, he even wanted to torture them. He naturally couldn't tolerate this. Boom. The Hellblade carried a monstrous sharpness as it slammed into the barrier set up by the 5 sovereigns' divine weapons. The barrier immediately began to distort. Even though the barrier was set up by the 5 sovereign divine weapons, it was still just divine might. Divine aura was equivalent to a human's aura. No matter how strong the aura was, just a normal. In other words, the divine might of the sovereign divine weapon was merely an ordinary technique. A fully awakened sovereign divine weapon would be on another level. The Hellblade had fully awakened. Without a Dominator divine weapon, it was impossible to stop the Hellblade with just aura. Crack! The barrier only lasted for 3 breaths. With a loud bang, it shattered on the spot. The terrifying sharpness of the Hellblade immediately enveloped Qin Feiyang and the white-eyed wolf. This is the price of being arrogant. The black-clothed middle-aged man's eyes flashed with a cold light. But before he finished speaking, clang! Accompanied by a deafening sound, the blood dragon blade carried a monstrous divine aura as it came out of Qin Feiyang's body and collided with the Hellblade. A world-destroying aura immediately surged out. The blood dragon blade decisively retreated with the 2 people and the wolf. The Hellblade was the same. The divine aura rolled out and protected the black-clothed middle-aged man. At this moment, the black-clothed middle-aged man looked at the blood dragon blade in a daze. There was actually a 6th sovereign weapon? Suddenly, his pupils shrank. Wasn't this the dragon's sovereign weapon, the blood dragon blade? Why would the dragon's sovereign weapon be with Qin Feiyang? Are you surprised? Are you surprised? Do you really think we are afraid of you? I'm just teasing you. The white-eyed wolf grinned. The black-clothed middle-aged man suddenly became angry and asked, "Why is the blood dragon blade with you?" "Oh, you know about the blood dragon blade. It seems that you know a lot about the dragon's situation." The white-eyed wolf screamed. Before the black-clothed middle-aged man could speak, the frenzied wolf laughed and said, "After all, we are all forbidden areas. We must know more or less." The black-clothed middle-aged man raised his eyebrows and said, "You haven't answered our question. Who do you think you are? Why should we answer you? If you have the ability, go and find out for yourself. But I'm afraid you won't have the chance." The white-eyed wolf's eyes were filled with killing intent. He looked at the blood dragon blade and said, "Leave the battlefield to us." "Understood." Blood dragon blade smiled savagely. Divine might rolled out from him as he pointed at Hellblade and said, "Let's not obstruct them here." The Hellblade didn't say anything. The black-clothed middle-aged man looked at the blood dragon blade, and then glanced at Qin Feiyang, the frenzied wolf, and the white-eyed wolf. He waved his hand and said, "Go." Clang! The Hellblade immediately rushed into the sky and disappeared into the Star River. The blood dragon blade laughed arrogantly and chased after the frenzied wolf. "What do you plan to do now?" Qin Feiyang looked at the black-clothed middle-aged man and said indifferently, "Whoosh." The black-clothed middle-aged man's third eye appeared again. The black and white eyes were filled with a strange light. "You still want to plot against us?" The frenzied wolf smiled coldly and a third eye appeared between his eyebrows. It was as if there was a mountain of corpses and a sea of blood in this eye. It emitted a monstrous murderous aura. Blood eye. Everything in sight was petrified. Just like now, the frenzied wolf looked at the black-clothed middle-aged man, and his feet immediately turned to stone. This ability, the black-clothed middle-aged man was shocked. "Old Candle Dragon, it seems that if we don't show ourselves, you can't do anything to them." Accompanied by a hoarse laugh, an old man in red appeared in the void not far away. "Qin Feiyang, Madman Mo, and the Golden-Winged Wolf King. You really live up to your reputation." Another cold voice sounded and 2 men and 2 women appeared beside the old man in red. As soon as the 5 people appeared, a terrifying power of laws rushed toward the blood eye between the frenzied wolf's eyebrows. "What? So many ultimate laws." Even the current Qin Feiyang, the frenzied wolf, and the white-eyed wolf couldn't help but change their expressions when they saw this scene. Because each of these 5 people had mastered 2 or 3 ultimate laws. And in terms of strength, whether it was ultimate laws or ordinary laws, they had all reached the level of ultimate laws. In other words, the 5 people were like the black-clothed middle-aged man. They were all super ultimate experts and were on the same level as the patriarchs like Qi Ji. Boom. Without hesitation, Qin Feiyang, the white-eyed wolf, and the frenzied wolf all immediately activated their power of laws, and turned it into a huge wave that covered the sky and blasted toward the 5 people's power of laws. They didn't activate their ultimate laws now because they didn't have time to do so. Because these 5 people had appeared too suddenly and attacked them at the first moment. If they activated their ultimate laws now, they would have been drowned by the 5 people's power of laws before their ultimate laws appeared. Accompanied by a loud bang, Qin Feiyang, the frenzied wolf, and the white-eyed wolf's power of laws shattered on the spot. The two people and the wolf spat out blood and retreated continuously. After all, the 5 people each had mastered 2 or 3 ultimate laws. Whether it was quality or quantity, they were above them. Moreover, at the same time, the black-clothed middle-aged man actually destroyed his petrified legs and activated the ultimate law of time, instant time. He instantly appeared in front of the frenzied wolf and pointed at the frenzied wolf's blood eye. A destructive power of law roared out from his fingertip. The frenzied wolf screamed as his blood eye shattered on the spot. The terrifying destructive power tore the frenzied wolf's glabella and blasted into his head. Gotcha! The frenzied wolf's head instantly exploded as flesh and blood splattered everywhere. Senior brother. Little frenzied wolf. Qin Feiyang and the white-eyed wolf's expressions changed as they hurriedly summoned their power of laws and blasted the black-clothed middle-aged man together. The black-clothed middle-aged man was blasted away on the spot. Then Qin Feiyang and the white-eyed wolf took the frenzied wolf's divine soul and body and retreated like lightning. His life was hanging by a thread. If it weren't for Qin Feiyang and the white-eyed wolf's timely reaction, the frenzied wolf's divine soul would have been shattered by the black-clothed middle-aged man's destructive power of law. Chapter 3658. To be able to react in time, it seems that your combat experience and awareness aren't bad. The red-clothed old man spoke with a hint of appreciation in his eyes. Thank you for the compliment. The white-eyed wolf smiled sinisterly as a cold light flickered in his eyes. To actually injure Madman to such an extent, this is unforgivable. Praising you guys a bit, and you're getting carried away? One of the women snorted as a majestic life force gushed out from her body and shrouded the black-clothed middle-aged man. With the help of this life force, the black-clothed middle-aged man's self-destroyed legs were instantly repaired. Law of life? Qin Feiyang and the white-eyed wolf were stunned. That's right. Isn't there still the law of life? How could they forget about this? With the law of life, what's there to be afraid of? Not only Qin Feiyang and Madman, but even the white-eyed wolf himself had neglected the newly plundered law of life. We have the law of life. You have no chance of winning. The black-clothed middle-aged man spoke as the third eye between his eyebrows emitted a strange light. Haha. It's just the law of life. What's so great about it? The white-eyed wolf's eyes were filled with disdain. Boom. With the activation of the law of life, not only the white-eyed wolf's injuries, but even the injuries on Qin Feiyang's face were instantly healed. Immediately after, boundless life energy rushed towards the madman's body. His shattered head began to repair at a speed visible to the naked eye. What? You also have the law of life? The 6 of them were dumbfounded. Is it that strange? But thanks to your reminder, I would have forgotten about the law of life that I plundered from Qi Yefeng. The white-eyed wolf laughed. As his voice fell, Madman's head was reconstructed, and even his injuries were all healed. His divine soul immediately returned to his body. The law of life is indeed powerful. Madman laughed loudly. Even if his head was shattered, it only took a few blinks of an eye to reconstruct it. Qi Yefeng? The 6 of them were surprised. That's right. This law of life was plundered from Qi Yefeng. You can say that. I fused with her life laws of nature. The white-eyed wolf laughed. Fused with Qi Yefeng's life laws? The 6 of them looked at each other. Others might not know who Qi Yefeng was, but they knew it very well. This was the patriarch of the Wood Qilin clan. Just like them, he was a super expert who stood at the top of the pyramid of the Sky Cloud realm. The golden-winged wolf king had actually plundered her laws? What was even more unbelievable was, snatching Qi Yefeng's life law, he was actually still able to walk out of the Qilin Holy Land alive. They slowly realized that they had greatly underestimated the abilities of the 2 humans and the wolf. First it was the dragon's blood dragon blade, then the mad scientist's war soul, and now the law of life. Everything was beyond their expectations. You don't even know that Brother Lien can plunder the power of laws of others? It seems like you guys don't know much about us either. The white-eyed wolf scanned the 6 of them, his eyes full of contempt. It's time to strike back. 6 supreme experts, please don't disappoint us. The mad scientist smiled sinisterly. and the power of the blood demon emerged. Like a wave of blood, it instantly enveloped this world. The power of the blood demon was countless times more terrifying than the power of the Een demon. It was simply pervasive as it crazily rushed into the six of them. The six of them suddenly felt that their divine soul, divine power, blood, and even the power of laws were being eroded by the power of the blood demon. Swish! At the same time, 3,000 clones appeared behind Qin Feiyang. The karma law and the destruction law, the two supreme profounds, were all activated. 3,000 clones, 6,000 supreme profounds, to the six of them. This was a calamity that would wipe them out. Be careful. These aren't clones. The black-clothed middle-aged man roared. Because when Qin Feiyang and the others forced their way into the inner area, he had already seen the power of the 3,000 clones. Making a prompt decision, they had all activated their supreme profounds. Sure enough, each of them had mastered 6 supreme profounds. Haha, all of you are ants. The 3,000 clones laughed heartily and waved their hands, sending 6,000 supreme profundities of supreme profundities toward the 6 of them. Boom. Accompanied by a deafening boom, the supreme profoundness of the 6 was instantly shattered in the void. It was an unstoppable suppression. One had to know. Each of them had mastered 2 to 3 supreme laws. The 6 of them had at least a dozen supreme profounds. With such terrifying strength, if it were anyone else, they would definitely not be a match. However, now whether it was Qin Feiyang, the madman, or the white-eyed wolf, they all had unparalleled heaven-defying means. For example, the power of the blood demon. As long as the madman was given enough time, the power of the blood demon could completely devour the 6 of them, let alone the 3,000 clones. Once the 3,000 clones appeared, who could compete? Boom. As the 6,000 supreme profounds attacked, a trace of fear appeared in the eyes of the 6 of them. This was the strength of this lad? He was indeed powerful. Even for supreme experts like them, it was difficult to resist his sharpness. Qin Feiyang, stop! The black-clothed middle-aged man roared. But Qin Feiyang turned a deaf ear. The 6,000 supreme profounds covered the sky and attacked the 6 of them. Before it reached them, under the impact of the terrifying aura, the bodies of the 6 of them had already begun to crack, and blood splattered everywhere. At this moment, they felt a sense of impending death that they had not felt in a long time. Brother Qin, have mercy. Just as the 6 of them were about to be drowned by the 6,000 supreme profounds, another shout was heard. Qin Feiyang was slightly taken aback. He looked up and saw 2 figures flying through the air. It was Yin Xiang and the Master Jura. They are indeed in the inner region. The madman muttered. However, Qin Feiyang did not show mercy because of the arrival of Yin Xiang and the Master Jura. The 6,000 supreme profounds drowned the 6 of them. Hurry up and activate the life laws. The black-clothed middle-aged man roared. The woman who had mastered the life laws immediately released a majestic life force from her body and rushed toward the black-clothed middle-aged man and the other 4. They are not your enemies. Yin Xiang was burning with anxiety. The masked Azura was the same. However, facing the current Qin Feiyang, they could only be anxious. As for Qin Feiyang, he still turned a deaf ear to them. Killing intent flashed in his eyes. Trust me, they really have no evil intentions. They just don't want you to step into the land of the buried gods too early. Yin Xiang shouted. The madman looked at Yin Xiang and did not seem to be joking. He stretched out his hand and said, Old Qin, wait a moment. Qin Feiyang frowned and looked at the 3,000 clones. The 3,000 clones waved their hands, and the supreme profounds that filled the sky immediately dissipated in the void. The black-clothed middle-aged man and the other 5 heaved a sigh of relief. Fortunately, Yin Xiang had arrived in time and had the life laws. Otherwise, they would have been dead by now. The madman also retracted his blood demon power and looked at the black-clothed middle-aged man and the other 5. He looked at Yin Xiang and asked, You said that they have no evil intentions and just don't want us to step into the land of the buried gods too early. What do you mean by that? This matter involves too many people. Now is not the time to tell you. Anyway, they are doing this for your own good. Yin Ziang shook his head and let out a sigh of relief. The madman paused and looked at Qin Feiyang and the white-eyed wolf. He frowned and said, "That's the same as not saying anything? I think he's tricking us." The white-eyed wolf snorted. The eyes of the 3,000 clones flashed with killing intent again. Seeing this, Yin Ziang's heart, which had just calmed down, was in his throat again. He looked at the black-clothed middle-aged man and sighed. Why don't we tell them? After all, they have all grown up. Moreover, Qin Feiyang has the bloodline power of the purple gold divine dragon. He has the right to know what happened back then. The six were silent. Qin Feiyang raised his eyebrows, looked at the six people and asked, "What's the matter?" It was related to the bloodline power of the purple gold divine dragon? This matter was definitely not simple. The six were still silent. Qin Feiyang couldn't help but be annoyed. I gave you a chance, but you didn't say it. Don't blame me for being merciless. The 3,000 clones attacked again. The black-clothed middle-aged man's eyes trembled. He looked at Qin Feiyang and said, "It's not that we don't want to say it, but we can't say it now." "Why?" Qin Feiyang raised his eyebrows. The black-clothed middle-aged man said, "If we tell you now, the Feng people, the dragons, and the Qilin race will attack us. You know very well the strength of these three forces. Facing them, the land of buried gods has no chance of winning." Qin Feiyang was surprised. It was related to the Feng people, the dragons, and the Qilin race? "Unless you have the ability to fight them, I won't tell you." The black-clothed middle-aged man's attitude was firm. "Right now, I really don't have the ability to fight them. However, so what if the land of buried gods is wiped out by the three forces? What does this have to do with me? Today, if you don't give me a satisfactory answer, I will never let you go." Qin Feiyang's eyes flashed coldly. Rumble. The 3,000 clones activated two laws. The 6,000 profound meanings appeared again, emitting an unparalleled aura. "Let me tell you," Yin Ziang shouted. "Yin Ziang, shut up." The black-clothed middle-aged man shouted. "Shut up." Qin Feiyang has been wandering in the sky cloud realm for so many years. You should know his character. He is a man of his words. If you really don't say it, the three forces won't need to make a move. You will die in his hands now. We can't care so much now. Moreover, he has the right to know all this. Yin Ziang said gloomily. He then looked at Qin Feiyang and said, "Actually, the land of buried gods isn't like the Feng people, the dragons, and the Qilin race. This is a sealed land." "Sealed land?" Qin Feiyang, the black-clothed middle-aged man, and the white-eyed wolf were stunned. "That's right. The core area of the land of buried gods isn't like what you think." Yin Ziang nodded. "Then what's in the core area?" Qin Feiyang asked. "The core area." Yin Ziang opened his mouth. However, before he could say anything, the black-clothed middle-aged man and the other five glared at Yin Ziang and shouted in unison, "Shut up." At the same time, whoosh, accompanied by a terrifying aura, more than 20 figures broke through the sky like lightning and landed around Qin Feiyang and the others. Chapter 3659. A total of 22 people. The aura they exuded was extremely powerful. This sudden unforeseen event caused Qin Feiyang and the others to be startled. Then they hurriedly looked over and their expressions changed greatly. "It's you guys." Qin Feiyang was too familiar with these 22 people. He had seen each of them with his own eyes. No. Among them, there was a middle-aged man that Qin Feiyang had never seen before. However, it wasn't difficult to determine this person's identity, because these people were the dragons, Feng people, and the patriarchs of the Kirin clan. Feng people. Fire Feng people, Ice Feng people, Ice Changtian. Kirin clan, Qi Ji Qi Yefeng, etc. Dragons, golden dragons, etc. The person that Qin Feiyang hadn't seen before was the father of the dragon's princess, the patriarch of the Silver Dragon clan. The 22 patriarchs of the three forbidden areas had all come to the land of buried gods. What was going on? Weren't the bodies of Bing Changtian and the others destroyed by you guys? How did they recover so quickly? Madman was surprised. Obviously. Each clan has someone who has mastered the supreme profound of life law. Qin Feiyang transmitted his voice. This was the power of the supreme profound of life law. For example, Qin Feiyang and the others. In the past, the white-eyed wolf didn't have the life law. If their bodies were destroyed, it would take a long time to rebuild them. As for the mermaid princess, although she had comprehended the life law, she hadn't reached the level of the supreme profound. Although she had the ability to heal, it was definitely not as good as the supreme profound. And now, as long as the white-eyed wolf activated the life law, it wouldn't take long to rebuild his body. The previous madman was undoubtedly the best proof. His head was smashed by the middle-aged man in black, but in a few breaths, he had recovered. Moreover, it had been half a year since the ambush at the Death Glacier. The 3 forbidden areas all had a time array that lasted 5,000 years. Even if they didn't have the life law, they should have rebuilt their bodies after such a long time. What are you guys doing here? Qin Feiyang looked at the group of people and raised his eyebrows. Qiji glanced at the 2 people and the wolf and shook his head. What happened today has nothing to do with you. 2 people and 1 wolf were stunned when they heard this. When they came back to their senses, they turned their heads to look at Yun Xiang, the masked Azura, and the black-clothed middle-aged man. It seemed like they were here for these people. At the same time, Yun Xiang, the masked Azura, and the black-clothed middle-aged man all wore gloomy expressions. The black-clothed middle-aged man glared at Yun Xiang and said in a deep voice, "I told you not to say it, but you didn't believe me. Now you know the price." "How would I know they were here? Besides, isn't this too much of a coincidence?" Qin Feiyang and the others came to the land of buried gods, and the 3 patriarchs also came to the land of buried gods? Yun Xiang was furious. Hearing this, the black-robed middle-aged man's heart trembled. He looked at Qin Feiyang's group and the white-eyed wolf and asked, "Did anyone know that you came to the land of buried gods?" Ah. The 2 people and 1 wolf were stunned and shook their heads. No one knew. No. Someone must know. Otherwise, these people wouldn't have appeared in the land of buried gods. The black-clothed middle-aged man said in a deep voice. Qin Feiyang frowned and pointed at Qiji and the others. "You mean they followed us here?" The black-clothed middle-aged man nodded. "Impossible. The Feng people, the dragons and the Kirans, no one knew that we came to the land of buried gods." Qin Feiyang shook his head. Although many humans and beasts saw them enter the land of buried gods, these humans and beasts couldn't enter the core area of the 3 forbidden areas. Naturally, there was no way for them to inform the 3 major races. Wait. Could it be Feng Ho? The white-eyed wolf was surprised. Feng Ho? Qin Feiyang and Madman were stunned. The black-clothed middle-aged man and the others didn't frown. That's right. When Feng Ho came to find us, she might have guessed that we would enter the land of buried gods, so she let these people follow us. The white-eyed wolf said. The black-clothed middle-aged man heard this and said in a deep voice, "Didn't she also tell you not to come to the land of buried gods?" "Yes." The white-eyed wolf nodded. "Then it must be her." The black-clothed middle-aged man clenched his hands and looked at Qiji and the others. "What do you mean now?" "What do I mean? You know in your heart." The Fire Feng people spoke with murderous intent in his eyes. The black-clothed middle-aged man said, "But we didn't violate the agreement. If we didn't appear in time, Yun Xiang would have told them by now." The Fire Feng people snorted. "So it's because of this." Qin Feiyang suddenly understood and looked at the group with a frown. "What is it that you don't want us to know?" But no one at the scene answered him, which made Qin Feiyang extremely angry. The Fire Feng people looked at Yun Xiang and said, "And you, who gave you the courage to hunt down my Feng people's clansmen in the heavy region?" Yun Xiang's pupils shrank, and he turned to glare at Qin Feiyang and the white-eyed wolf. The madman said indifferently, "Don't look at us. Feng Ho came to find us personally, so we can only tell the truth." Yun Xiang raised his eyebrows and looked at the Fire Feng people and said angrily, "You Feng people are allowed to hurt others?" But my Feng people did not hurt Yun Zhongtian. On the contrary, when Yun Zhongtian was in the Feng people, this seat treated him like a guest of honor. The Fire Feng people said, crippling his qi and putting him under house arrest in the Feng people. This is called a guest of honor. What a joke! Yin Xiang retorted. What an arrogant young man. This seat was originally wondering who was supporting you from behind. To dare to be so arrogant. So it's these divine beasts of the land of buried gods. However, do you really think that they can protect you? The Fire Phone people smiled disdainfully and looked at the other patriarchs, saying, Everyone, let's do it. Boom. 22 patriarchs attacked at the same time, and all kinds of profound meanings appeared, carrying a destructive aura, attacking the black-clothed middle-aged man and Yin Xiang. One must know, these were not the patriarchs of the rich and powerful families, but the patriarchs of the various clans of the 3 Forbidden Lands. Each of them was a super expert who had mastered 6 kinds of profound meanings. How terrifying was it when the 22 of them joined forces? Hurry up and leave. The black-robed middle-aged man and the other 5 shouted at Yin Xiang and Yin Xiang. Then they activated their ultimates and attacked the 2 of them. However, Yin Xiang and the other 2 did not leave, and the power of 4 laws roared out. Qin Feiyang and the white-eyed wolf looked over, and their pupils instantly shrank. They were all profound meanings of the strongest laws. Yin Xiang had mastered the space-time law and the death law. The masked Shura had mastered the karma law and the devouring law. So strong? Looking at the 4 profound meanings of the strongest laws, not to mention Qin Feiyang, the frenzied one, and the white-eyed wolf, even Qi Ji and the others were shocked. They did not expect that the land of buried gods actually hid 2 peerless monsters. But it was useless. Because even with Yin Xiang and the frenzied one, there were only 8 of them, and the other side had 22 super experts. This was a complete and utter suppression. With a loud bang, Yin Xiang and the others' ultimates were unable to put up any resistance and were shattered in the void. Then Qi Ji and the others' ultimates attacked the 8 of them madly. Hurry and help us. Yin Xiang asked Qin Feiyang and the white-eyed wolf for help. Hearing this, Qi Ji and the others' eyelids twitched, and they couldn't help but glance at the 2 men and the wolf. But Qin Feiyang and the white-eyed wolf did not make a move. The frenzied one sneered. If you don't tell us the truth, why should we help you? If you don't help us, you will regret it. Yin Xiang roared. Then we will talk about it when you regret it. The frenzied one smiled coldly. Okay, I will tell you. The core area sealed the purple gold divine dragon. Yin Xiang roared. What? The eyes of the 2 men and the wolf trembled. Sealed the purple gold divine dragon? Yin Xiang, you are really courting death. Qi Ji and the others were also furious, and all their profound meanings attacked Yin Xiang alone. You will die even if you don't tell us. Is there a difference? Yin Xiang sneered and ignored the profound meanings. He looked at Qin Feiyang and said, If I'm not wrong, you are the descendant of my master, and my master is the purple gold divine dragon. The descendant of the purple gold divine dragon. Qin Feiyang felt like he was struck by lightning, and his head was rumbling. This truth was simply too unexpected for him. There are too many secrets hidden here, and I only know 10 or 20% at most. If you want to know the truth, you have to help them. Yin Xiang pointed at the black-clothed middle-aged man and roared. Qin Feiyang quivered and looked at the frenzied one, and the white-eyed wolf. He shouted, Save them, Shua. The white-eyed wolf immediately activated instant time, and led Qin Feiyang, the frenzied one, and 3,000 clones in front of Yin Xiang and the others. Boom. The 3,000 clones attacked, and various profound meanings appeared and blasted toward the profound meanings of Qi Ji and the others. The situation was instantly reversed. The profound meanings of Qi Ji and the others were like withered trees that couldn't withstand a single blow, and were annihilated on the spot. Qin Feiyang, don't forget our 1,000-year promise. Qi Ji shouted. I haven't forgotten. But now, I have to find out the truth. Whoever dares to stop me will be killed without mercy. Qin Feiyang said, and his eyes were filled with killing intent. Qi Ji and the others couldn't help but feel a chill in their hearts. It could be said that, if Qin Feiyang, Feng Ho, the Dragon King, and the Qilin Lord didn't appear, no one from the 3 races would dare to fight with him. Kill without mercy. How awe-inspiring. Since you want to break the 1,000-year promise, then don't blame us for being impolite. But before Qin Feiyang finished speaking, a cold voice sounded. Shua. Three figures descended in the sky, and a terrifying aura instantly enveloped the world. The expressions of Qin Feiyang and the others changed drastically, because the people who came were the Dragon King Feng Ho and the Qilin Lord. They really didn't expect that not only did the 22 patriarchs come, but even the lords of the three forbidden areas would come personally. I want to see how powerful you, Qin Feiyang, are. Feng Ho attacked. A wave of fire rolled out. It seemed to be an ordinary wave of fire, but it contained great divine power. Even the white-bearded old man's law of darkness couldn't compare to it. No. Between the two, there was no comparison at all. The white-bearded old man's law of darkness was as insignificant as an ant in front of this wave of fire. Chapter 3660. Boom. With the arrival of the fire wave, the ultimate profundities of the 3,000 clones were all annihilated in an instant. Immediately after, the fire wave covered the sky and covered the earth. Whether it was Qin Feiyang, the white-eyed wolf, or Yin Xiang and the others, they all felt an indescribable fear in their hearts. The 3,000 clones were shattered. The white-eyed wolf and the woman immediately activated the law of life. Majestic energy surged into the bodies of Qin Feiyang and the others, but it seemed to be of no use. Their bodies were shattering. Is this the ultimate profundities? The two people and the wolf were shocked. In front of Feng Ho, they really felt like ants, powerless in body and mind. It's been many years since we last met. Feng Ho's elegance is still the same as before. However, at this moment, accompanied by a cold voice, a white figure in the distance, as if walking in the river of time and space, instantly landed in front of Qin Feiyang and the others. Qin Feiyang, the woman, and the white-eyed wolf looked at the newcomer in surprise. It was a skinny figure, about 1.8 meters tall, with long snow-white hair, and an incomparably powerful aura. You are. The black-robed middle-aged man, and the others also stared at the person's back, their faces full of surprise. The white-haired man turned his head and glanced at the black-robed middle-aged man and the others. He snorted coldly. After so many years, you are still as useless as before. His voice was sonorous and powerful. However, they couldn't see his face clearly. Like the Dragon King and the others, his face was covered by a divine light. This voice, however, when they heard this person's voice again, the eyes of the black-robed middle-aged man and the others couldn't help but tremble. There was unconcealable excitement on their faces. Seeing their reactions, Qin Feiyang, the woman, and the white-eyed wolf were even more confused. Judging from their reactions and the young man's tone, he seemed to be a very powerful person. Could he be the owner of the land of buried gods? An existence like the Dragon King, Feng Ho, and the Qilin Master? Qin Feiyang, little lunatic, white-eyed wolf. Look clearly at what true strength is. The white-haired man glanced at the two people and the wolf again. His tone was indifferent, and no one could tell what he was feeling. As his voice fell, the white-haired man raised his arm, and a sword light appeared in his palm. As soon as this sword light appeared, a terrifying and peerless aura immediately surged out like a tide, and a scene of doomsday also appeared. Qin Feiyang, the madman, the white-eyed wolf, was still puzzled. This person actually called out their names. Could it be that he already knew them? However, when he saw the sword light, his eyes trembled. This sword light was formed from the laws of the sword. However, unlike ordinary sword laws, the imposing aura contained within this expanse of sword light was actually not inferior to the wave of flames that surged over. One had to know. Feng Ho's law of fire might have already comprehended the ultimate profound. Moreover, this person's laws of the sword was actually not inferior to Feng Ho's laws of fire. Didn't that mean that this person's laws of the sword might have already attained the level of ultimate profundity? Boom. As the white-haired man waved his hand, the sword light soared into the sky and charged toward the wave of flames. Accompanied by an earth-shattering sound, the two immediately shattered in the void. So powerful. The hearts of the two people and the wolf trembled. That wave of flames could easily crush the ultimate profundity of 3,000 incarnations. However, this person's sword light formed from the laws of the sword could compete with this wave of flames. Although it was unknown whether he had comprehended the ultimate profundity, It was enough to see that this person's strength was not inferior to Feng Ho's. However, Qin Feiyang had a trace of doubt in his eyes. Why did this person give off a familiar feeling? At the same time, Qi Ji and the other 22 clan leaders also stared at the white-haired man in shock. Dragon King, Feng Ho, and the Qilin Master did not attack again. They also seemed to be sizing up the white-haired man. At the scene, gradually, it fell into a dead silence. We welcome the return of the Feather Emperor. Suddenly, the black-robed middle-aged man and the other 5 all knelt behind the white-haired man and bowed. Feather Emperor? Qin Feiyang and the other 2, as well as the white-eyed wolf, were bewildered. This name, they had never heard of it before? They looked at Yun Xiang and the masked Azura and realized that the 2 of them were also puzzled. Obviously, they did not know who the Feather Emperor was. If even Yun Xiang and the white-eyed wolf king did not know, then this person should not be from the land of buried gods. Since he was not from the land of buried gods, why were the black-robed middle-aged man and the other 5 kneeling? Feather Emperor. At the same time, when Qi Ji and the others heard this name, their eyes trembled and their reverence was undisguised. You actually did not die? Dragon King finally spoke. Although his expression could not be seen, his tone was filled with deep disbelief. Are you disappointed that I did not die? The white-haired man glanced at the Dragon King, Feng Ho, and the Qilin Master, as if they were old acquaintances. I understand. The little rabbit's agreement with us was actually to wait for your return, Feng Ho said in a deep voice. I don't know what agreement the little rabbit has with you, but I should really thank it. If it was not for it taking care of the land of buried gods, these old subordinates of mine would have been killed by you, the Feather Emperor said. Old subordinates? Qin Feiyang and the white-eyed wolf king looked at each other. The black-robed middle-aged man and the other 5 were actually this person's old subordinates? Then this person's background is not small. Not to mention anything else, he could definitely compete with the Dragon King, the owner of the 3 forbidden areas. Humph. So what if you are back? With your strength alone, can you beat us? The Qilin Master finally spoke. In his hoarse voice, there was a trace of killing intent. Then what if Uncle Rabbit is included? Accompanied by a mocking laugh, the little rabbit descended in front of Qin Feiyang and the others. Big brother. Qin Feiyang and the madman were pleasantly surprised. You only know how to cause trouble all day long. The little rabbit glared at the 2. Can you blame us for this? Qin Feiyang and the madman felt aggrieved. Who else can I blame if not you guys? If you guys didn't come to the burial ground, would this have happened? But forget it, it has already happened. Dragon King, Feng Ho, Qilin Master, what happened back then was your fault. Why? Now you still want to make mistakes again? The little rabbit looked at the 3 forbidden areas and frowned. What a joke. This is our fault. Human Emperor shouldn't have fallen in love with the purple gold divine dragon. Moreover, back then didn't you always oppose it? Dragon King said angrily. What? Qin Feiyang the madman and the white-eyed wolf king looked at each other. There was really someone who fell in love with the purple gold divine dragon. But, even if they fell in love, what did it have to do with Dragon King and the others? Uncle Rabbit did oppose it, but he didn't say that he wanted to kill them. Besides, since they have already achieved good results, why bother to pursue so much? The little rabbit sighed. Don't say so much to me. Even if you appear, what can you do? Today, we must flatten the burial ground of the gods and put an end to everything, Dragon King said. Then you can try. Feather Emperor stared at Dragon King, exuding a threatening aura. Qin Feiyang looked at the Feather Emperor, then looked at the Dragon King and the other 2. He turned his head to look at the little rabbit and asked with a frown. Big brother, can you tell me what is going on? I don't have time to talk nonsense with you now, the little rabbit said without turning her head. She looked up at Dragon King and the other 2 and said, if the 5 of us really go to war, the entire Sky Cloud realm will definitely be plunged into misery and suffering. Is this what you want to see? The 3 forbidden area lords were silent. The little rabbit continued. Back then, facing the divine kingdom, the 5 of us joined forces and risked our lives to protect the Sky Cloud realm. Do you want to repeat the same mistake? Divine Kingdom? Which force is this? The 2 men and 1 wolf were suspicious. They faintly realized that many years ago, an earth-shattering thing should have happened in the sky cloud realm, and all the grudges were related to this matter. Don't talk about the Divine Kingdom. The Divine Kingdom has already left, Dragon King said in a deep voice. Indeed. But can you guarantee that they won't make a comeback? Others don't know about the Divine Kingdom, but you know very well that if the Divine Kingdom really makes a comeback, then with the current strength of our sky cloud realm, we won't be their opponent at all. After all, the human emperor and the others are no longer here. The little rabbit couldn't help but sigh at the end. As soon as these words came out, Qin Feiyang could clearly feel that whether it was the little rabbit, Feather Emperor, or Dragon King, the 3 Forbidden Area Lords, they were all shrouded in a gloomy aura. The solemn and silent atmosphere at the scene seemed a little scary. Clang. Suddenly, an earth-shattering sound exploded in the sky of the entire sky cloud realm. That's right. It wasn't just the sky of the land of buried gods. The heavenly cloud sea, the eastern continent, the western continent, the northern continent, the southern continent, the land of the shadow devils, the heavy realm, and the death glacier all echoed out. What's the situation? Qin Feiyang and the others raised their heads to look at the sky. It was as if a heavenly bell was rung, shocking the entire sky cloud realm. This sound, the little rabbit, Feather Emperor, and Dragon King, the 3 Forbidden Area Lords, also had a trace of surprise in their eyes. Not good. Quickly go to Sky Cloud Island. The little rabbit suddenly let out an explosive shout, and immediately disappeared without a trace. The Feather Emperor, Dragon King, and the other 3 Forbidden Area Lords were the same. Why aren't they restricted by the rules? Madman frowned. They could enter the various forbidden areas at will. The black-clothed middle-aged man retracted his gaze and said, their strength is already above the rules. Above the rules? Qin Feiyang, Madman, and the white-eyed wolf were stunned. That's right. As long as one grasps the ultimate profound of the strongest law, one can transcend the restrictions of the rules. The black-clothed middle-aged man nodded. The ultimate profound of the strongest law? Qin Feiyang was shocked. Madman and the white-eyed wolf were shocked. Yin Xiang and the masked Azura were also shocked. In this case, these terrifying existences had really comprehended the ultimate profound. Moreover, the Feather Emperor and Feng Ho had at least grasped 2 ultimate profound, because previously, the Feather Emperor and Feng Ho had only activated the law of fire and the law of sword. However, what's going on with this heavenly bell sound? The black-clothed middle-aged man couldn't help but raise his head to look at the sky with his brows tightly knitted. Torch Dragon, the great calamity is coming. Immediately expel all the humans in the land of buried gods and seal the land of buried gods. Dragons, Feng people, Kirin clan and Qin Feiyang, please leave quickly. Suddenly, in the depths of the inner area, a hoarse voice sounded like a bell, falling into the ears of Qin Feiyang and the others. Chapter 3661. Everyone looked toward the depths of the inner region. Their faces were full of shock and confusion. They wanted to drive away all the humans and seal off the land of the buried gods. Why was this so? Qin Feiyang, the madman, and the white-eyed wolf were even more confused. They had thought that apart from Yin Xiang and the masked Azura, there were only 6 people in the land of the buried gods. They didn't expect there to be someone else in the depths. And from the tone of the order, it seemed that the person's status in the land of the buried gods was higher than the 6 people. If that was the case, wouldn't this person's strength be even stronger than the 6 black-clothed middle-aged men? Could it be, apart from the Emperor of Feathers, there was someone else who had mastered the ultimate profound meaning? Do it immediately. The hoarse voice sounded again with a tone that didn't allow for disobedience. Yes. The 6 people in black responded respectfully. They looked at Qin Feiyang, the madman, the white-eyed wolf, Qizhi, and the other 22 patriarchs. They cupped their hands and said, please leave immediately. Qizhi and the others frowned. Although it sounded like something terrible had happened, No one knew what the situation was. If they left like this, the Dragon King, Feng Ho, and the Qilin Master would definitely punish them when they returned. Qin Feiyang also remained motionless. His gaze seemed to be able to cross the inner region and see the distant core region. Others might not understand, but the madman and the white-eyed wolf knew what Qin Feiyang was thinking. Yin Xiang had said that the purple gold divine dragon was sealed in the core region. Qin Feiyang might be the descendant of the purple gold divine dragon. With Qin Feiyang's personality, he would definitely go to the core region to find out. Because this was the secret that Qin Feiyang had been searching for. Now that he had finally found a clue, how could he let it go so easily? I'm not joking with you. Even if the Dragon King, Feng Ho, and the Qilin Master return, you will still be asked to leave immediately. Seeing that the group was unmoved, the hoarse voice sounded again. Accompanying it was a terrifying aura. This wasn't the aura of a dominator divine weapon, but the aura of the power of law. And this aura was almost comparable to Feng Ho and the Emperor of Feather's power of law of fire and law of sword. It can't be. The madman and the wolf were shocked. This person's strength? The black-robed middle-aged man looked at Qi Ji and the others and said in a deep voice, "Now that the Dragon King, Phoenix Empress, and the Qilin Master are not here, I advise you not to anger those people in the depths." Qin Feiyang, the madman, the ingrate, and his heart trembled. Just how terrifying was the land of the buried gods. You guys should go too. The middle-aged man in black let out a long breath and looked at Qin Feiyang, the madman, and the white-eyed wolf. Qin Feiyang shook his head and said, "I want to go to the core area." "I know why you want to go to the core area. But even we only have a rough idea. If you really want to know the details, you can ask the Dragon King, the Emperor of Feathers, and Little Rabbit. If they feel that the time is right, they will tell you the truth." The middle-aged man in black said in a deep voice. Qin Feiyang stood in the void and said nothing. Whoosh. At this moment, the sovereign's divine weapons also flew out from the galaxy and landed beside Qin Feiyang and the black-robed middle-aged man. "Feiyang, I feel like something big is going to happen." The voice in the ancient castle sounded. "Aren't you in the galaxy? Why do you have this feeling?" Qin Feiyang was surprised. "Although we are in the Milky Way, we can still clearly hear the sound of the sky bell. And when we heard the sound of the sky bell, we all had an uneasy premonition." The ancient castle said. Qin Feiyang was shocked. Even the Dominator divine weapons felt uneasy. What happened? "Please go," the middle-aged man in black said again. But Qin Feiyang didn't move. He raised his head and looked at the core area. "Qin Feiyang, we really can't tell you the answer you want. But now that the Emperor of Feathers has returned, you can ask him if you have any questions. Because from now on the Emperor of Feathers is the owner of the land of buried gods. We can only let you go to the core area with the Emperor of Feathers' consent." The hoarse voice from the depths rang out once more. There was even a hint of pleading in it. "Okay. I will wait here for the Emperor of Feathers." Qin Feiyang's eyes showed a hint of stubbornness. "Zai, why are you so stubborn? Zhulong, go and make the arrangements. You must expel all the humans in the shortest time possible. But don't hurt them." The hoarse voice was filled with helplessness. "Yes." The middle-aged man in black and the other 6 replied respectfully. Then, they put away the 6 Dominator divine weapons and took a deep look at Qin Feiyang. Then they rushed to the central area like lightning. As for Qin Feiyang, the middle-aged man and the white-eyed wolf, they were left to the side. Qin Feiyang didn't care. To be honest, he really wanted to talk to the Emperor of Feathers, because the Emperor of Feathers gave him a sense of familiarity, which confused him. He had never seen this person before and had nothing to do with him. Why did he give him such a feeling? The madman looked at Qin Feiyang, then at Yin Xiang and the Master Jura. He asked curiously, "You are all the disciples of the purple gold divine dragon?" "Yes." The two looked at each other and nodded. "Isn't it sealed? How can it teach you cultivation?" The madman was suspicious. "Although master is sealed, its consciousness is awakened," Yin Xiang said. "Is that so?" The madman nodded and asked curiously, "Then have you seen it in person?" "No. The two shook their heads. You haven't even seen it in person, and you want to acknowledge it as your master? The madman was startled. He laughed and said, Aren't you afraid of being fooled by it? Don't be disrespectful to master. Whether it was Yun Xiang or the Master Jura, they couldn't help but be furious when they heard this. Disrespectful? The madman raised his eyebrows and said angrily, I'm just voicing my doubts. Is that disrespectful? Yun Xiang said in a deep voice, In any case, we won't allow anyone to offend master. It seems that in your eyes, your master is more important than your father. To think that your father still cares about you all day. The madman shook his head and sighed. Yun Xiang's expression froze. Then he slowly lowered his head and shook his head. Master saved my life. Father raised me. Both are important to me, but, the madman said, but you are blaming yourself and feeling guilty. You think that your mother died because of you. Mother died because of me. Yun Xiang roared, his eyes turning red. Madman looked deeply at Yun Xiang. It seemed that this self-blame was deeply ingrained in him, and it was impossible to persuade him otherwise. He shook his head and said, All right, this is your own problem. I can't be bothered with it. But who was the one who gave the order? He is an existence that you can't afford to offend. Yun Xiang took a deep breath. His complexion recovered a lot. Can't afford to offend. The madman murmured and looked up. Little Qinzi, do you remember that last time when we were in the Qilin Holy Land, Qiji and the others said that only the patriarchs of the Qilin clan are qualified to inherit the forbidden technique? At that time, I didn't pay much attention to the words patriarchs of the past. But now that I think about it, there seems to be a very important message. The white-eyed wolf suddenly transmitted his voice. Qin Feiyang was taken aback. Patriarchs of the past. Does that mean that other than the current patriarchs like Qiji, there are also former patriarchs in the world? The white-eyed wolf was suspicious. Hearing this, Qin Feiyang looked at the madman, a trace of surprise crawling in his eyes. Qin Feiyang didn't care about this point. If the white-eyed wolf hadn't mentioned it now, he probably would never have remembered. If these so-called patriarchs of the past are really still alive, then wouldn't their strength have reached the peak of perfection? I remember someone said that the foundation of the forbidden zones is far more terrifying than what we see now. It seems that it is true. The white-eyed wolf muttered. The madman shook his head and sighed. It seems that it won't be easy to destroy the forbidden zones. Let's take it slow. The most important thing is to figure out what kind of grudge the forbidden zones have with us. We obviously didn't provoke them, but they all want to get rid of us. Regarding this point, Qin Feiyang had a headache. About a moment later, swish, 5 figures descended in the sky. It was the Dragon King's group of 5. Feng Ho lowered her head to look at Qin Feiyang and asked, Where is Qiji and the others? They have already left, Qin Feiyang said. Hearing this, Feng Ho glanced at the depths of the inner area and sneered. It seems that the sound of the sky bell has also awakened those old antiques who are in seclusion. Old antiques, Qin Feiyang's eyes flashed. It seems that Feng Ho knows the situation of the land of the buried gods better than them. But thinking about it, it makes sense. After all, she is the lord of a forbidden zone. There is probably no secret in the sky cloud realm that she doesn't know. But this is also good. It saves this lord from wasting my breath. Feng Ho muttered and lowered her head to look at Qin Feiyang again. Don't you want to know why we are dealing with you? Now come with us to Sky Cloud Island. Qin Feiyang and the white-eyed wolf looked at each other, and a trace of surprise appeared in their eyes. Swish. With a wave of Feng Ho's hand, the 2 people and 1 wolf immediately appeared on the top of Sky Cloud Island. When they appeared on the top of the mountain, they immediately sensed a heart-palpitating aura that shrouded this sea area. They quickly looked up, and their heads immediately rumbled. In the sky above, there was really a sky bell floating at this moment. The sky bell was 99 feet tall, and its whole body was black. It was engraved with mysterious patterns. These patterns were like clusters of flames, exuding a terrifying aura. What is that? The 2 people and 1 wolf were shocked to the extreme. The sound you heard before was made by it. The little rabbit's voice sounded in the void. Before the voice fell, the little rabbit, the feather emperor, dragon king, Feng Ho, and the Qilin master also descended on the top of the mountain. It was made by it. The two people and one wolf looked up and down at the sky bell. Suddenly, they saw 4 words on the sky bell. Sky bell divine treasure. Chapter 3662. The divine treasury has appeared. The divine kingdom has appeared. A faint sigh was heard. Qin Feiyang Duo and the white-eyed wolf immediately looked at the feather emperor. Although they looked down on the feather emperor's expression, there seemed to be a hint of sadness in his tone. Big brother, what do you mean? Madman looked at the little rabbit suspiciously, and found that the little rabbit was looking at the sky bell divine treasury with a hint of sadness. Dragon King, Feng Ho, and the Qilin master couldn't help but sigh deeply. The white-eyed wolf said angrily, I say you guys, can you stop sighing here? You don't understand. The divine kingdom has made a comeback. For our sky cloud realm, it will be a great disaster. The little rabbit shook her head. If you don't say it, we definitely won't understand. The white-eyed wolf's face was dark. Can't you be more straightforward? What's the point of wasting time? The 5 supergiants were silent for a long time before their eyes suddenly fell on Qin Feiyang Duo and the white-eyed wolf. What do you mean? 2 people and 1 wolf were suspicious. Qin Feiyang, from now on, let's stop fighting. The Dragon King was the first to speak, but this sentence shocked Qin Feiyang Duo and the white-eyed wolf. If it was Feng Ho or the Qilin master who said this, they could still accept it. But the Dragon King, one must know. All along, the Dragon King had been the one who advocated getting rid of them. But now he actually took the initiative to ask for peace? How could they not be surprised? The Dragon King said, Don't misunderstand. This sovereign is not afraid of you guys, so I proposed a truce for the Sky Cloud realm. What's going on? Qin Feiyang frowned. Promise this sovereign first. The Dragon King said. All right. Qin Feiyang nodded. All right. Now let us formally establish an alliance. Henceforth, the Feng people, the dragons, the Qilin race, the human race, the land of buried gods, and the heavenly cloud sea have all agreed to a truce. The alliance will only end when the divine kingdom disintegrates or retreats. After saying this, the Dragon King looked at Feather Emperor, the little rabbit, Feng Ho, and the Qilin master asking, None of you have any objections, right? No problem. Bunny shook her head. Forming an alliance is indeed the best choice, but I really don't dare to trust the 3 major races anymore. Feather Emperor sneered. We don't trust you either. But now this is the only choice. Dragon King coldly snorted. You don't trust me? Back then, who was it that stabbed me in the back? If it weren't for you, would the human sovereign and the others have fallen? If they hadn't fallen, why would we be so worried when facing the divine kingdom? The Feather Emperor glared at the Dragon King trio. Yes, but regarding this matter, we have never regretted it. If we were given another chance, we would still choose to take action. Dragon King, Feng Ho, and the Qilin master spoke one after another. Qin Feiyang hurriedly interrupted them and said with an extremely impatient expression, all right. You guys can slowly quarrel in the future. Tell us the truth first. You guys talk. I'll go up and take a look. The Feather Emperor coldly looked at the Dragon King trio and instantly landed on the top of the sky dome. He looked up at the sky bell. In addition to grief, there was also a trace of anger and killing intent in his eyes. Below, at the mountain peak, Qin Feiyang waved his hand, and a tea table and several chairs appeared. After the Dragon King, Feng Ho, the Qilin master, and the little rabbit sat down one after another, Qin Feiyang took out a tea set, ancient dragon god tea, and 3 jars of unparalleled divine brew. These 3 jars of unparalleled divine brew were naturally prepared for the little rabbit, the white-eyed wolf, and the frenzy. Qin Feiyang sat opposite the little rabbit and lowered his head. While brewing tea, he said, My request is not high. I only hope that every word you guys say next is true. Now that things have come to this, there is no need for us to hide it from you. Moreover, regarding this matter, we have a clear conscience. We are not afraid of you knowing. Dragon King said. That's good. Qin Feiyang nodded. After Qin Feiyang finished brewing tea, Dragon King squatted down and took a sip. He sighed. This matter, we have to start from the Divine Kingdom. Qin Feiyang drank tea. The Frenzy and the White-Eyed Wolf both drank tea and silently looked at the Dragon King. Dragon King asked, "Do you know what the Sky Cloud realm was like?" "We don't know." The two men and one wolf shook their heads. The original Sky Cloud realm, the Eastern continent, the Western continent, the Northern continent and the Southern continent. These 4 continents were actually a complete continent. At that time there was no Sky Cloud Sea. And there were no 4 forbidden areas. And all of this was caused by the war with the Divine Kingdom later. Dragon King said. War? Qin Feiyang the Frenzy, and the White-Eyed Wolf frowned. That's right. The Divine Kingdom is not a good place. It is a complete world. Like your Black Tortoise realm, there are many powerful creatures inside. There are even existences that can stand shoulder to shoulder with us. Moreover, they also have sovereign divine weapons. Their numbers are not below ours. Dragon King said in a deep voice. What? Qin Feiyang the Frenzy and the White-Eyed Wolf were shocked. So this is the true face of the Divine Kingdom. No wonder even the Dragon King and the other lords of forbidden areas are so afraid. Back then, the Divine Kingdom invaded our Sky Cloud realm and turned the entire Sky Cloud realm into an Azura battlefield. The war lasted for 1,000 years, causing the Sky Cloud realm to be plunged into misery and suffering. These 1,000 years can be said to be the darkest period of our Sky Cloud realm. Not only the human race, we dragons, Feng people, Kirin clan, Beast clan, and Sea Beast clan all suffered heavy casualties. Later, we had no choice but to form an alliance and join forces to fight against the Divine Kingdom. But even so, countless of our race's super powerhouses fell. Even the powerhouses who mastered the ultimate profound almost all died in battle. Dragon King sighed. So tragic. The White-Eyed Wolf was shocked. That's right. The Sky Cloud realm back then was an extremely prosperous period. Compared to the current Sky Cloud realm, it was many times stronger. Just our dragons alone had hundreds of powerhouses who mastered the ultimate profound. The human race, Feng people, Kirin clan, Beast clan, and Sea Beast clan were about the same. With such a background, we almost couldn't defeat the Divine Kingdom even if we joined forces. You can imagine how terrifying the Divine Kingdom's strength was. Dragon King said. The hearts of the two men and one wolf trembled. The dragons had hundreds of powerhouses who mastered the ultimate profound. Adding the human race, Feng people, Kirin clan, Beast clan, and Sea Beast clan. Wouldn't there be at least 600 of them? One must know. In the current Sky Cloud realm, apart from the Dragon King and the other giants, the strongest person they had ever seen was the white-bearded old man. And the white-bearded old man had only reached the beginner level. Although they didn't see it with their own eyes, with their current cultivation, it wasn't difficult to imagine how tragic the battle between the Sky Cloud realm and the Divine Kingdom was when they heard the Dragon King's words. Later, under our joint efforts, we finally made the Divine Kingdom retreat. But it is also because of these 1,000 years of bloody war that the Sky Cloud realm has fallen apart, broken apart into pieces, and become like this. Similarly, the vitality of our clans has been greatly damaged. The dragons, Feng people, and Kirin clan are hidden in the 3 forbidden areas. The Beast clan is hidden in the land of burial. The Sea Beast clan is hidden in the Sky Cloud Sea. All these years we have been living in seclusion, but in fact, we have been reproducing and recovering our vitality. Dragon King sighed deeply, full of bitterness. Yes. In that battle, even us old guys almost died. We really didn't want to be disturbed again, so we created the 3 forbidden areas and the Sky Cloud Sea for peace. Feng Ho nodded. Qin Feiyang suddenly understood. Sure enough, it was an earth-shattering event. What about the land of buried gods? Does the purple gold divine dragon sealed in there have anything to do with little Qinzi? The white-eyed wolf asked. There must be a relationship. And we have already determined that Qin Feiyang is the descendant of the purple gold divine dragon and the human emperor. Because in this world, only their descendants can have the purple gold dragon blood. The Kirin master said hoarsely. Qin Feiyang said. So when I entered the land of buried gods, I felt a familiar summon, and the power that summoned me was the purple gold divine dragon sealed in the core area. The little rabbit asked in surprise. You can feel a familiar summon in the land of buried gods? Yes. And I also feel a sense of familiarity from the Feather Emperor. Qin Feiyang nodded. Hearing this, the little rabbit and the masters of the 3 forbidden areas looked at each other. After a long time, the Dragon King sighed. Then it seems that you are their descendant, because this is the summon of the bloodline power. Qin Feiyang suddenly became excited. In that case, the purple gold divine dragon sealed in the core area was the ancestor of the Qin clan. Who is the human emperor? Madman was puzzled. The little rabbit said, the human emperor was the leader of the human race back then. His strength was heaven-defying, and he was known as the #1 person of the human race. So strong? Madman was shocked. The little rabbit said again, don't you want to know who the Feather Emperor is? He is the younger brother of the human emperor. What? Qin Feiyang, the Dragon King, and the white-eyed wolf looked up at the Feather Emperor standing in front of the Sky Bell. He was actually the younger brother of the human emperor? It is precisely because he is the younger brother of the human emperor that you feel a sense of familiarity with him, as the descendant of the purple gold divine dragon and the human emperor. It is also because of this that we dare to conclude that you are their descendant. The Kirin master said hoarsely. Qin Feiyang said in a daze, then don't I have to call him ancestor? Indeed. The little rabbit nodded. Little Qinzi, awesome. You are actually the descendant of the human emperor and the Feather Emperor. Then, from now on, brother and little Madman will rely on you to live a good life. The white-eyed wolf chuckled. Madman was also secretly speechless. This identity was really a little scary. Wait. But suddenly, Madman's expression stiffened. He lowered his head and pondered for a while before turning to look at Qin Feiyang and sending a voice transmission. Since you are the descendant of the human emperor and the purple gold divine dragon, then isn't your ancestor, Qin Batian, their son? Huh? Qin Feiyang was slightly stunned. Think about it. Although Qin Batian is in the Great Qin, his background has always been a mystery. Moreover, Qin Batian is the first ancestor of the Great Qin lineage. In this case, Qin Batian is very likely to be the son of the human emperor and the purple gold divine dragon. Madman thought to himself. Chapter 3663. It's possible, it's possible. After listening to Madman's analysis, the white-eyed wolf thought to himself. If that's the case, Qin Feiyang muttered to himself for a while. Then he sent a voice transmission with a smile. Then the ancestor should be very happy. He finally solved the mystery of his origins. Although the human sovereign realm father has already fallen, the purple gold divine dragon mother is still alive. It's a pity that he's not here now. Madman shook his head regretfully. Yeah. So many years have passed. I wonder where the 2 ancestors are now. Qin Feiyang nodded. Logically speaking, now the 4 forbidden areas of the Sky Cloud realm, the 4 continents, and the Sky Cloud Sea have left his footprints. The 2 ancestors should have received the news and returned. But now, there was no news. The conversation between the 2 people and 1 wolf was carried out in secret, so the little rabbit and the Dragon King trio didn't know. They didn't know the existence of Qin Batian, because after coming to the Sky Cloud realm for so long, Qin Batian had only appeared in front of people once. And this time, except for showing the space-time law, he didn't leave anything such as his name, purple gold dragon blood, and so on. Even now, let Qin Batian stand in front of the Dragon King and the others. They would never think that this person might be the biological son of the human emperor. Qin Feiyang took a deep breath, looked up at the Dragon King and the others, and asked, why was the purple gold divine dragon sealed and who sealed it? Facing this question, the Dragon King and the other 2 lords of the forbidden areas fell silent. Qin Feiyang's eyelids twitched. Could it be the Dragon King, Feng Ho, and the Qilin Lord? After pondering for a moment, the Qilin Lord said, before telling you this, you must first promise us that you will never betray the Sky Cloud realm and defect to the Divine Kingdom. Betray the Sky Cloud Realm? Defect to the Divine Kingdom. What does this mean? Two people and one wolf looked at each other. How did he get involved in these issues? Feng Ho looked at Little Rabbit and asked, "You don't have any objections to our request, right?" Little Rabbit glanced at Qin Feiyang and drank her wine. She shook her head and said, "No." Qin Feiyang and the white-eyed wolf looked at the little rabbit suspiciously. The Divine Kingdom was the enemy. How could Qin Feiyang betray the Sky Cloud Realm and seek refuge with the Divine Kingdom? He simply could not do such a thing. Suddenly, the Feather Emperor landed in front of the table and sat beside the little rabbit. He looked at Qin Feiyang and said calmly, "This decision is not a joke. Think about it carefully." Hearing this, Qin Feiyang was even more puzzled. Even the Emperor of Feathers was being so cautious. Could it be that something big was about to happen? When Dragon King heard Feather Emperor's words, he frowned and said, "Feather Emperor, from what you are saying, if Qin Feiyang really seeks refuge with Scandinavia, you won't object? He has the right to choose." The Feather Emperor said. "You," Dragon King was furious. "Don't glare at me. No matter what choice he makes, I have to support him." The Feather Emperor said calmly. Feng Ho also glared at the Feather Emperor and said, "But you have to know that if he really seeks refuge with the Divine Kingdom, it will be like adding wings to a tiger for the Divine Kingdom. But for our Sky Cloud Realm, it will be a disaster." "All right." The Feather Emperor nodded. He looked at Feng Ho and the other two lords of the three forbidden lands and said, "Then let me ask you, if you were Qin Feiyang, what would you choose?" Hearing this, the three lords of the forbidden lands could not help but fall silent. No matter what, he has an inseparable relationship with the Divine Kingdom. We can't force him. Little Rabbit shook her head and sighed. "What? I have an inseparable relationship with the Divine Kingdom?" Qin Feiyang was shocked. The white-eyed wolf and the madman were also surprised. What was going on? How could a person born in the lower realm have an inseparable relationship with the Divine Kingdom? This time, Qin Feiyang really didn't dare to make a rash decision. Seeing Qin Feiyang remain silent for a long time, the Feather Emperor sighed and said, "Let's not talk about this for now. When the Divine Kingdom descends, let him discover and accept it himself before making a decision. But if he really chooses the Divine Kingdom, it will be a hidden danger. If the Sky Bell Divine Treasure did not appear, we can still ignore him for the time being. But now that the Sky Bell Divine Treasure has appeared, and the Divine Kingdom is about to arrive, we will never allow a hidden danger to continue growing." The Dragon King spoke with a hint of murderous intent. Although Feng Ho and the Qilin Master did not speak, there was a hint of murderous intent in their eyes. "You want to touch him? Then we'll have to see if you can get past me first." The Feather Emperor looked at the three lords of the forbidden areas without showing any weakness. "What's going on?" Qin Feiyang looked at the four people who were at each other's throats, his mind full of doubts. The little rabbit pondered for a moment, then looked at the Dragon King and the other two and said, "Actually, you should trust Qin Feiyang. After all, we have watched him grow up. In the face of the big picture, he is quite reliable. You can continue to protect him like this. I hope you won't regret it in the future." After saying that, the Dragon King threw away the teacup in his hand and left without looking back. Although the Dragon King's words are a bit unreasonable, it is undeniable that it is the truth. In the future, if Qin Feiyang really chooses the Divine Kingdom, then you will be the sinners of the Sky Cloud Realm for all eternity. I also hope you won't regret it in the future. Feng Ho and the Qilin Master said one after another, then got up and melted into the void, disappearing without a trace. They left just like that? Qin Feiyang, the Qilin Master, and the white-eyed wolf looked at the void where the three lords of the forbidden areas had disappeared, their faces full of shock. Little Rabbit and the Feather Emperor also lowered their heads and remained silent. The atmosphere at the scene was quite heavy. "Big brother, old ancestor. What are you talking about?" Qin Feiyang came back to his senses, looked at Little Rabbit and the Feather Emperor, and asked suspiciously, even if he had to make a choice, shouldn't they tell him the reason first? Moreover, No matter how hard he racked his brains, he could not find a reason to defect to the divine kingdom. Little Rabbit and the Feather Emperor raised their heads and looked at Qin Feiyang. The Feather Emperor's eyes were covered by divine light and could not be seen through. But there was a trace of struggle in Little Rabbit's eyes at this moment. Big brother. What do you want to do? We are sworn brothers. Qin Feiyang's heart trembled, because in Little Rabbit's struggling eyes, he faintly caught a trace of killing intent. Moreover, he had always been particularly sensitive to killing intent. At this moment in Little Rabbit's eyes, he really felt the killing intent. She actually wanted to kill him? This was not a joke. Little Rabbit was slightly stunned, then couldn't help but shake her head and smile bitterly. Really, nothing could escape from this kid's eyes. Looking at the madman and the white-eyed wolf, Little Rabbit looked at Qin Feiyang and said, as the Feather Emperor said, I will leave this matter to you to slowly discover it yourself. You are also like this? Qin Feiyang was dissatisfied. Isn't Uncle Rabbit always like this? Little Rabbit pouted, then turned around and disappeared into the mountains below with the wine jar. Qin Feiyang couldn't help but feel helpless and looked at the Feather Emperor. The Feather Emperor was silent for a long time, then looked up at the sky and said, Do you know? Whether it is the Dragon King, Little Rabbit, or even me, we are all gambling. Gambling on what? Qin Feiyang was suspicious. Gambling on your future choice. However, I will still say the same thing. No matter what you choose, I will support you. In addition, the existence of Qin Batian, you must not let the world know about it, especially the Dragon King and the other two. The Feather Emperor reminded. Okay. Qin Feiyang nodded. But suddenly, he was stunned and looked at the Feather Emperor in surprise, asking, How do you know about my ancestor? The white-eyed wolf and the madman finally reacted. That's right. How did this person know about the existence of Qin Batian? The Feather Emperor smiled proudly and said, Not only do I know about Qin Batian, but I also know about Lu Xingyang and the others. I even know about the Fire Qilin and the divine beast uncle that you mentioned. The two men and the wolf looked at each other. This person knew too much. Not to mention the Fire Qilin and the divine beast uncle, even Lu Xingyang, no one in the sky cloud domain knew about his existence. Suddenly, Qin Feiyang's eyes trembled slightly. He looked up at the Feather Emperor's white hair and said in surprise, Could it be that you are that mysterious person? Mysterious person? The madman and the white-eyed wolf were stunned and immediately looked at the Feather Emperor's white hair. When Qin Batian and the others were forced to enter the Nether King's hell, it seemed that it was this white-haired youth who saved them. When the Fire Qilin and the Hell God Hound were trapped in the forest of gods and devils, it was also this white-haired youth who helped them. Looking at the current Feather Emperor, he also had a head of white hair and knew about Qin Batian and the others. Looking at it, it might really be him. What mysterious person? The Feather Emperor looked at the two men and the wolf suspiciously. Qin Feiyang said, It's the person who helped my ancestors in the forest of gods and devils. I see. The Feather Emperor smiled and pondered for a moment before nodding. It's indeed me. The two men and the wolf looked at each other in dismay. After a long time, they smiled bitterly. It was really like the old saying, one can wear out iron shoes to look for something in vain, only to find it by chance. They didn't expect that the person who helped them time and time again was a close relative. The Feather Emperor was the younger brother of the human emperor. Naturally, he was a relative. The madman said suspiciously, Since you already met Qin Batian, why didn't you tell him about his background? Why didn't you directly send him to the Sky Cloud domain? Why did you let him go to the ancient domain? At that time, he was too weak. Knowing this wouldn't do him any good. The Feather Emperor shook his head. Then how did you send them to the ancient domain? Could it be that by grasping the ultimate profundity of the strongest law, one can really stand above the laws? Qin Feiyang asked. By grasping the ultimate profundity of the strongest law, one can indeed stand above the laws. However, it's only limited to the laws of a single world. The divine ruins and the ancient domain are two different worlds. Therefore, even if one grasps the ultimate profundity of the strongest law, one can't directly send someone from the divine ruins to the ancient domain. The Feather Emperor shook his head. Qin Feiyang said, "In other words, one can really break the interference of the laws." Indeed. As long as you comprehend the ultimate profundity of the strongest law, whether it's the divine ruins, the ancient domain, or your homeland, the Great Qin, you won't be restricted by the laws. However, to go to other worlds, you still have to go through a specific entrance. The Feather Emperor explained. Understood. Then, how did you send my ancestors from the Nether King's hell to the ancient domain? Qin Feiyang was curious. Of course, I need some methods. It's also because of these methods that I was able to hide in the Nether King's hell for so many years without being discovered by the guardians of the divine ruins. The Feather Emperor's tone was no longer indifferent. There was a loving smile on his face. Chapter 36-64. What method? Qin Feiyang and the white-eyed wolf looked at the Feather Emperor curiously, but to this, the Feather Emperor just smiled. The two men and the wolf were helpless. It seemed that this was another secret that couldn't be told. Qin Feiyang asked, "Since you chose to help our ancestor hide his identity, does that mean that our ancestor is really the son of the human emperor?" "That's right. Because I was the one who personally sent him to the Great Qin." The Feather Emperor nodded. "What? You were the one who sent him to the Great Qin?" The two men and the wolf were shocked. This result was really unexpected. "That's right. Before Big Brother passed away, he asked me to take good care of him. He also asked me to send him to the mortal world, hoping that he could be an ordinary person for the rest of his life, and live an ordinary life. Because on the path of cultivation, there are too many schemes and schemes. Big Brother did this for his own good. But there was no other way. He was the son of the human emperor and the purple gold divine dragon. He was born extraordinary. Even if I wanted him to be ordinary for the rest of his life, I couldn't do it." The Feather Emperor shook his head and smiled. "You want to?" Qin Feiyang was suspicious. "That's right. I have to obey Big Brother's will. When I sent him to the Great Qin, I didn't leave him anything related to cultivation. But he was too outstanding. When he was 18 years old, I went to the Great Qin to visit him. I found that not only had he become a monstrous talent, but his bloodline power had also evolved into the purple gold dragon blood. At that time, I knew that even I couldn't stop his awakening." The Feather Emperor smiled like a father. Qin Feiyang asked, "So you taught him cultivation?" "No." The Feather Emperor shook his head. "No." Qin Feiyang was stunned. "Yes." The Feather Emperor nodded and looked at the two men and the wolf, asking, "Do you know why the humans of the Sky Cloud realm called Big Brother the Human Emperor? Is there a need to think about it? It must be because he was the leader of the human race." The white-eyed wolf said. "No. Everyone regards him as the human emperor because of his character. Big Brother is benevolent by nature, and he values relationships and righteousness. Back then, when the Divine Kingdom attacked, if it wasn't for Big Brother stepping forward bravely, the human race of the Sky Cloud realm would have long been wiped out. Since Big Brother is like this, I naturally hope that his son will be like this too. That is because I do not wish to personally create a vicious, merciless, and evil demon." So he was secretly observing him. After a period of observation, I discovered that not only did he inherit Big Brother and sister-in-law's talent, but he also inherited their morals. Thus, in the depths of the sea of reincarnation, I faked the appearance of a divine treasury and indirectly gave him all kinds of divine items. Feather Emperor smiled. "I see." Qin Feiyang suddenly realized that the character of his ancestor was truly impeccable. Wait a minute. Divine treasures in the depths of the sea of reincarnation? Suddenly, Qin Feiyang was slightly taken aback. After thinking for a moment, he finally recalled that the ancestors, the demon ancestor, and the others had said that a divine treasury had appeared in the sea of reincarnation. The space-time gate. The thieving heaven realm. The 3,000 incarnations. The broken sword. These divine items were all found in that divine treasury. Qin Feiyang asked. "You mean this divine treasury was created by you back then?" It seems that you already know about the divine treasury. Yes. The divine treasury was created by me. After all, with my strength, it is too easy for me to create a scene of a divine miracle. Feather Emperor nodded. I see. Qin Feiyang suddenly understood. No wonder this so-called divine treasury never appeared again. It turned out that it was not a real divine treasury. So the space-time gate, the 3,000 incarnations, the broken sword, and the thieving heaven realm are all yours? White-eyed wolf asked. The space-time gate and the thieving heaven realm are just ordinary divine weapons. But the 3,000 incarnations and the broken sword are different. The broken sword is Big Brother's divine weapon, called the human sovereign sword. But because of the battle with the experts of the divine kingdom, the human sovereign sword was cut into two. Feather Emperor explained. Human sovereign sword? The human sovereign's divine weapon. The two men and one wolf exchanged glances. They had already guessed that the broken sword was not simple, but they did not expect it to be so powerful. As the human sovereign's divine weapon, it was definitely a sovereign divine weapon. But because it was damaged, it could not display its peak strength. Then where is the other half of the human sovereign sword? Qin Feiyang asked. In the divine kingdom. Feather Emperor pondered for a while and sighed. Divine kingdom? Qin Feiyang was stunned. Yes. Back then, after the human sovereign sword was cut into two, Big Brother risked his life to take back the other half. The other half was taken away by the experts of the divine kingdom. Now that the divine kingdom has appeared, if the tip of the sword is still there, I will definitely take it back. Feather Emperor clenched his fists. I will help you when the time comes, Qin Feiyang said. And us. White-eyed Wolf and Frenzy also spoke. You guys? Feather Emperor looked at the two men and one wolf and shook his head with a smile. You guys should take care of yourselves first. Don't look down on us. We are still quite strong now. White-eyed Wolf was dissatisfied. Strong. Hearing this, Feather Emperor smiled and shook his head. Only when you guys comprehend the ultimate profound will you be considered strong. Only then will you have the ability to compete with the divine kingdom. Speaking of which, is the human sovereign sword in your hands now or in Qin Baishan's? Heard about it. The two men and one wolf lowered their heads and fell silent. What's wrong? Feather Emperor had a bad premonition in his heart. Qin Feiyang sighed. I dare not hide anything from old ancestor. The human sovereign sword is in Ice Dragon's hands. What? Feather Emperor's expression changed. You also know about Ice Dragon? White-eyed Wolf was suspicious. I have been lurking in the Nether King's hell for so many years. Of course I know. How could you guys be so careless and let the human sovereign sword fall into his hands? Feather Emperor was somewhat angry. It's all my fault. Qin Feiyang briefly explained what happened in the ancient world. Feather Emperor was silent for a while and shook his head. This matter can't be blamed on you. But you really have to think of a way to get the human sovereign sword back from Ice Dragon. After all, this is my big brother's divine weapon. Then are you a match for Ice Dragon? Qin Feiyang asked. No. Feather Emperor shook his head. Frenzy was shocked. If even you are a match for Ice Dragon, how strong is it? Very strong. Although I have already ascended above the laws, it has already ascended beyond the laws. These are two completely different concepts. It can even be said that it has already transcended this world. Therefore, if it were to make a move, even I wouldn't be able to fight back. Feather Emperor sighed, and his words revealed a deep sense of helplessness. Transcended this world? Qin Feiyang was extremely shocked. Wasn't this the realm he had been pursuing? He didn't expect Ice Dragon to have already reached this height. Feather Emperor waved his hand. The future is hard to predict. Let's talk about it when the time comes. Let's hope so. Qin Feiyang nodded and asked. Then what about the 3,000 incarnations? Is that also your deity technique? If it's really your deity technique, why doesn't anyone from the 3 Forbidden Lands know about it? The 3,000 incarnations aren't ours. In the Sky Cloud realm, only me, Big Brother, and sister-in-law know about the existence of the 3,000 incarnations. Feather Emperor said. Sister-in-law was naturally referring to the purple gold divine dragon sealed in the core region of the land of buried gods. What do you mean? The 2 men and 1 wolf were suspicious. Feather Emperor was silent for a long time as if he didn't want to talk about it anymore. Let's talk about the origin of the 3,000 incarnations later. That's not right of you. How can you only speak halfway? You're deliberately leaving people hanging. The white-eyed wolf immediately glared at Feather Emperor with extreme dissatisfaction. Fortunately, Feather Emperor could be considered an ancestor of the Qin clan. Otherwise, the white-eyed wolf wouldn't dare to be so impudent. This is a painful past. I don't want to talk about it. Feather Emperor shook his head. A painful past. The 2 men and 1 wolf looked at each other, their eyes filled with suspicion. But since Feather Emperor didn't want to talk about it, they couldn't do anything about it. They couldn't force Feather Emperor to tell them. They didn't have the strength to do so. The white-eyed wolf turned to look at Qin Feiyang and smirked. Mu Tianyang, demon ancestor, and Lu Xingyang, it seems like they all benefited from your ancestor. What do you mean? Qin Feiyang didn't understand. If not for your ancestor, the god treasury wouldn't have appeared. If the god treasury didn't appear, would they have been able to obtain the space-time gate, the thieving heaven realm, and the 3,000 incarnations? Furthermore, Boss Feather Emperor wanted to find a chance to give these items to your ancestor. But in the end, they benefited from it. The white-eyed wolf chuckled. Boss Feather Emperor? Feather Emperor's mouth twitched. This guy wasn't polite at all, directly trying to curry favor with him. At the same time, Qin Feiyang and Madman heard this and looked at each other. The white-eyed wolf's words made sense. Actually, I know all these things. But I didn't care. Firstly, their relationship back then was quite good, especially Lu Xingyang and Qin Batian. Secondly, I believed that with Qin Batian's ability, he would be able to take back these items sooner or later. But what I didn't expect was that Qin Batian didn't have such thoughts. In the end, it was you who took back the space-time gate, and the 3,000 incarnations. I also didn't expect that our Qin clan would give birth to such a genius like you. From all aspects, you are already above Qin Batian. Even Big Brother probably didn't expect this when he was alive. Feather Emperor chuckled. Don't praise me like that, I feel embarrassed. Qin Feiyang scratched his head and laughed dryly. Feather Emperor laughed. Qin Feiyang asked curiously, then why did you hide in the Nether King's hell? Firstly, to recuperate. Back then, during the battle with the Divine Kingdom, I was greatly injured. Secondly, to wait for you. Feather Emperor said. Wait for us? Qin Feiyang was stunned. Yes. Wait for you to grow. Although I followed Big Brother's last wish, and let Qin Batian be an ordinary person in the Great Qin dynasty, I have never given up on the idea of revenge. Moreover, since Qin Batian has stepped on the path of cultivation, he should naturally shoulder the responsibility that belongs to him. However, Feather Emperor looked at the sky and sighed. In the future, he will probably have a harder time making a choice than you. Another choice? The 2 men and 1 wolf frowned. What was the reason that made Qin Feiyang and Qin Batian make a choice? Chapter 36-65. Sigh. The Feather Emperor was silent for a long time before he sighed and shook his head. Let's talk about the future in the future. In short, no matter what choice you make, I will support you. Qin Feiyang was silent. He didn't know what to say since he didn't understand the situation. Don't be impatient. Because soon, you will know everything. The Feather Emperor seemed to have seen through Qin Feiyang's thoughts and smiled faintly. All right. Qin Feiyang nodded and smiled. When we first saw you, senior brother, the white-eyed wolf, and I all thought that you were the owner of the land of buried gods. We didn't expect you to be in the Nether King's hell. Now, am I not the owner of the land of buried gods? The Feather Emperor smiled proudly. Qin Feiyang asked, then, can we enter the core area of the land of buried gods to take a look? Don't think so much now, because even if you go to the core area now, you won't be able to help the purple gold divine dragon escape with your strength. Let's prepare to enter the Sky Bell Divine Treasure. The Feather Emperor looked up at the Sky Bell Divine Treasure floating in the sky and said, "Enter the Sky Bell Divine Treasure?" Qin Feiyang was slightly stunned and looked up at the Sky Bell Divine Treasure. There wasn't even a door, so how could he enter? The Divine Treasure appears, the Divine Kingdom appears. Do you know the meaning of this sentence? The Feather Emperor asked with a smile. We don't know. The two men and the wolf shook their heads. It means that once the Sky Bell Divine Treasure appears, the arrival of the Divine Kingdom won't be far away. In other words, the Sky Bell Divine Treasure is a prophecy that tells us in advance that the Divine Kingdom is about to arrive. And the Sky Bell Divine Treasure isn't directly related to the Divine Kingdom. It doesn't belong to the Divine Kingdom. It belongs to the Sky Cloud Realm, and is a real divine treasure. The Feather Emperor said. The two men and the wolf suddenly understood. Originally, they really thought that the Sky Bell Divine Treasure belonged to the Divine Kingdom. A real divine treasure? Wouldn't there be a lot of treasures? The Heaven Bell Divine Treasure not only has countless divine items, but also a sovereign divine weapon. There's even a chance to obtain the miniature version of an ultimate profound. If one's luck is heaven-defying, one might even be able to obtain the inheritance of an ultimate profound. Feather Emperor said. What? Qin Feiyang the madman and the white-eyed wolf's eyes trembled. He never expected that the Heavenly Bell Divine Treasure would actually have such good fortune. Last time, before the Divine Kingdom descended, the Heaven Bell Divine Treasure appeared. I entered it. I saw with my own eyes someone obtain a sovereign's weapon, a miniature of the laws. Let's put it this way. Half of the current sovereign divine weapons of the Sky Cloud Realm were taken from the Heaven Bell Divine Treasure. Feather Emperor smiled. No way. The two men and the wolf looked at each other. I think this time, the Feng people, the dragons, and the Kirans will definitely send people over. We didn't reach a truce agreement with them. Therefore, I'm guessing that Dragon King and the other two old bastards will play some tricks in the Sky Bell Divine Treasure. When the time comes, you must be careful. Feather Emperor warned. Originally, there was going to be a truce agreement, but because of Feather Emperor's intervention, Dragon King and the other two left in anger. The truce agreement was cancelled midway. They will personally enter the Heaven Bell Divine Treasure? The madman was bewildered. They won't. Because anyone who grasps the ultimate profound can't enter the Heaven Bell Divine Treasure. But they can let their subordinates deal with you. Feather Emperor said. So, entering the Heaven Bell Divine Treasure isn't a good thing for us? The white-eyed wolf frowned. That will depend on what Dragon King and the others think. If they really think of you as a potential danger, then with their character, they will definitely find an opportunity to eliminate you. Sigh. It's all an ill-fated relationship. Feather Emperor sighed deeply. Ill-fated relationship? The white-eyed wolf heard this and turned to look at Qin Feiyang and the madman. The two of them shrugged helplessly. It was useless to look at them, because they also didn't know what kind of ill-fated relationship made the Dragon King and the other two hate the purple gold divine dragon so much. Feather Emperor took a deep breath and looked at Qin Feiyang and the white-eyed wolf. He smiled and said, But I believe that with your current strength, even the old antiques of the various races won't be able to do anything to you. The two of them and the wolf looked at each other and smiled. You guys are still here? Do you really think my Heavenly Clouds Ocean is your headquarters? The little rabbit flew out from the mountain below and looked at Qin Feiyang and the others with displeasure. Even if you beg me, I don't want to come to this lousy place. Feather Emperor's tone was filled with disdain. The little rabbit was stunned. She landed on the mountain peak and said angrily, Fine, Uncle Rabbit is begging you. Hurry up and scram. Giving you so much face? Feather Emperor snorted coldly. You are still so enthusiastic? As expected, it's easy to change mountains and rivers, but hard to change one's nature. The little rabbit pouted. Feather Emperor sneered and said, These words are most suitable for you. After so many years, you still can't change your addiction to alcohol. Uncle Rabbit is happy? The little rabbit stretched out her paw and said indifferently, Third brother, give me a jar of unparalleled divine wine to satisfy your craving. Qin Feiyang smiled bitterly and took out a jar of unparalleled divine wine and handed it to the little rabbit. The little rabbit grabbed the jar and didn't forget to look at Feather Emperor proudly before drinking. Feather Emperor rolled his eyes and pondered for a while before asking, "What agreement do you have with the dragons, the Feng people, and the Qilin race? To let them ignore the land of buried gods?" "Nonsense. At that time, I used Uncle Rabbit's divine might to intimidate them." The little rabbit smiled proudly. "I'm not joking with you." Feather Emperor was incomparably annoyed. "Fine. Actually, it's not just the land of buried gods. For you, my descendant Uncle Rabbit and the Dragon King have long made an agreement." The little rabbit sighed. "Me?" Qin Feiyang asked. "Nonsense, if it's not you, who else could it be?" The little rabbit rolled her eyes at Qin Feiyang. "What agreement?" Qin Feiyang was suspicious. "Before you step into the sovereign realm, no matter how much trouble you juniors cause, the Dragon King, Feng Ho, the Qilin Lord, and the reclusive old antiques of the three races are not allowed to personally make a move against you. Otherwise, do you think you can live until today?" The little rabbit looked at Qin Feiyang and the white-eyed wolf and snorted coldly. The two men and the wolf looked at each other. It turned out that the little rabbit had always been taking care of them behind the scenes. And what sworn brothers? Do you think Uncle Rabbit is so easy to fool? The reason why Uncle Rabbit pretended to be stupid is to protect you. Because as long as Uncle Rabbit becomes sworn brothers with you, the Dragon King and the rest will naturally know how important you are in Uncle Rabbit's heart. So unless it's a last resort, they will definitely not dare to touch you. The little rabbit said. "I see." The two men and the wolf nodded in realization. Then they looked at the little rabbit and smiled embarrassedly. In the past, they really thought that the little rabbit was easy to fool. The Feather Emperor asked, "Then, what is the condition that you agreed to?" The little rabbit pondered for a while and sighed. "If you return one day, Uncle Rabbit will not interfere in the grudges between you." The Feather Emperor fell silent. "But you still interfered. Not long ago, in the land of buried gods, you were really domineering." The white-eyed wolf chuckled. "I can't help it. I can't control the power in my body." The little rabbit bared its teeth. The Feather Emperor suddenly said, "It shouldn't be that simple." "Then what else?" The little rabbit looked away. It seemed to be hiding something. "I want to hear the truth," the Feather Emperor said. "You are really infuriating." "All right." The little rabbit glared at the Feather Emperor, nodded and sighed. Actually, Uncle Rabbit gave them 15 nomological miniatures. The three races each have 15 nomological miniatures. Qin Feiyang and the other two, as well as the white-eyed wolf, looked at the little rabbit in shock. Was this for real? This little rascal had so many nomological miniatures in his hands? "Thank you." However, the Feather Emperor didn't doubt it. He bowed to the little rabbit gratefully. The little rabbit waved its paw and said, "No need to thank me. If there is a chance in the future, just give Uncle Rabbit more divine wine." As expected, 3 sentences can't be separated from wine. The Feather Emperor rolled his eyes. The madman came back to his senses and immediately ran to the little rabbit. He said with grievance, "Big brother, you are not being nice. With so many nomological miniatures, why didn't you give us a few?" That's right, that's right." The white-eyed wolf also agreed. "Hasn't the Sky Bell divine treasure appeared? If you want it, you have to snatch it with your own ability. How can you reap without sowing? Besides, in order to protect you and those people in the land of buried gods, Uncle Rabbit has already lost 15 nomological miniatures. Do you know how much wealth this is? Uncle Rabbit's heart aches just thinking about it." The little rabbit snorted. Yes, yes, yes. Big brother is the greatest." "Great brother, why don't you give one to each of us first? We are not greedy. Just an ordinary nomological miniatures will do. Are you tired? Come, come, come. Sit down. Little brother will give you a massage. Big brother will also give you a massage." The man and wolf were like 2 rascals. They pestered the little rabbit and refused to let go. "No need." The little rabbit kicked the man and wolf away. It pointed at Qin Feiyang and said, Learn from him. Look at how sensible he is. Unlike the two of you who are like two bandits. Cough cough. Qin Feiyang coughed dryly and chuckled. Actually, if Big Brother wants to give it to us, I won't be polite either. The little rabbit looked at the sky speechlessly. The Feather Emperor shook his head and laughed. He looked at the two men and wolf and warned. Grasping too many nomological miniatures might not be a good thing for the two of you. Therefore, even if you enter the Sky Bell Divine Treasure and have a chance to obtain nomological miniatures, don't fuse them. Fuse. The two men and wolf were stunned. That's right. There are two types of nomological miniatures. One is comprehended by oneself. This type of nomological miniatures will automatically fuse with us. The other type is the nomological miniatures formed naturally by heaven and earth. This type of nomological miniatures requires us to fuse with them. However, the nomological miniatures formed naturally by heaven and earth are extremely rare in the world. Throughout the countless years of the Sky Cloud realm, I have only seen one type. However, there are many such nomological miniatures in the Sky Bell Divine Treasure. The Feather Emperor explained. Qin Feiyang asked, according to what you said, the nomological miniatures formed naturally by heaven and earth can be given to others? That's right. The little rabbit can give to the Qilin clan and the Foam people. The 15 Tao of the dragons are the nomological miniatures formed naturally by heaven and earth. The Feather Emperor nodded. Chapter 3666. Madman looked at the little rabbit curiously and asked, where did you find so many laws? Over there. The little rabbit pouted at the Heavenly Bell Divine Treasure in the sky. You have also been to the Sky Bell Divine Treasure? Madman was surprised. Feather Emperor said, not only has it been there, but its luck is also very heaven-defying. Luck is very heaven-defying? Madman scratched his head and suddenly thought of something. He said in shock, could it be that you directly obtained the ultimate inheritance in the Sky Bell Divine Treasure? What does it have to do with you? The little rabbit raised its eyebrows and looked at Feather Emperor. Who told you to talk so much? Can you take care of your own matters? Feather Emperor's mouth twitched. He looked at Qin Feiyang and the white-eyed wolf and said, for now, don't think too much. Comprehend the ultimate profound. After saying that, he turned and left. Old ancestor, where are you going? Qin Feiyang asked anxiously. Land of buried gods. Feather Emperor replied without turning his head, and disappeared from Qin Feiyang's sight. Sigh. Qin Feiyang shook his head and sighed. Although he had solved many mysteries this time, there were still a few biggest mysteries that hadn't been solved. Why was the purple gold divine dragon sealed? And who was the one who sealed it? He had thought that it was Dragon King and the other two, but no one could confirm it, so he didn't dare to jump to conclusions. Also, where did the 3,000 clones come from? Why would Dragon King and the others be worried that he would join the Divine Kingdom in the future? Suddenly, Qin Feiyang turned to the little rabbit and asked, Big Brother, other than you and Feather Emperor, Dragon King, Feng Ho, and the Qilin Lord, who else knows about the Divine Kingdom? There are many people who know about the Divine Kingdom. For example, the Feng people, the dragons, and the Qilin clan's patriarchs all know about the Divine Kingdom. However, not many people know about the death of the human emperor, and the reason why the purple gold divine dragon was sealed. Other than us, only those reclusive old antiques. Little Rabbit said. How many hidden antiques are there in the Sky Cloud realm? Madman was curious. Because with the little rabbit's cultivation, the secluded old antiques that it spoke of were definitely existences that had grasped the ultimate profundities. Not as much as before. However, it will also exceed your imagination. Don't think about these questions now. What you should do now is to improve your strength. Do you understand? The little rabbit glared at the two people and the wolf. Understood. The two men and one wolf nodded repeatedly. In short, the arrival of the Divine Kingdom is a disaster for every living being in the Sky Cloud realm. We have to go all out. Especially Little Lunatic and White-Eyed Wolf. The two of you have great responsibilities. Grow up quickly, because the future will depend on you. Little Rabbit looked at the madman and the white-eyed wolf, her eyes flashing. Both of us have great responsibilities? The man and the wolf were stunned. Nonsense. Qin Feiyang and Qin Batian are two unknowns. If we can't count on them, then we can only count on the two of you. Your methods are very heaven-defying. In the future, you will definitely become one of the main forces. Little Rabbit said. You think so highly of us? The madman and the white-eyed wolf laughed. They didn't expect this little rabbit to have such great expectations for them. How did I become an unknown? But at the same time, Qin Feiyang was extremely puzzled. First, the Dragon King and the other two wanted him to make a promise. Then, the Feather Emperor said that they were all betting on his future choice. Now, even the little rabbit said that he was an unknown? What was the reason? Why couldn't they just tell him? Little Rabbit glared at the madman and the white-eyed wolf, waving her paw and said, In half a year, the Sky Bell Divine Treasure will open. You two quickly go and adjust your state. And you, Qin Feiyang, no matter what, Uncle Rabbit is still in the hands of the Dragon King. Thank you. Qin Feiyang smiled gratefully. Although the little rabbit had the intention to kill him before, she had always been concerned about him. Just based on this point, she was worthy of his respect. Sigh. The little rabbit sighed and once again disappeared into the mountains below. Divine Kingdom, Sky Bell Divine Treasure, Human Emperor, Feather Emperor, epitome of law. These people, these things are really beyond imagination. The madman shook his head and sighed. Yes. Who would have thought that so many major events had happened in the Sky Cloud realm? Qin Feiyang and the white-eyed wolf also sighed for a while. Suddenly, the madman looked at Qin Feiyang and the white-eyed wolf and asked, Did you notice a strange place? What strange place? One man and one wolf came back to their senses and looked at him suspiciously. When we were talking about the fall of the human emperor, it wasn't difficult to judge from the words of the Feather Emperor that the death of the human emperor must be related to the Dragon King, and the other two. But the Dragon King and the other two repeatedly stated that they have a clear conscience and don't regret doing so. Isn't this strange? The madman frowned. It is a bit strange. Qin Feiyang pondered for a while and nodded. It seems that there is a secret that is hard to talk about. The white-eyed wolf whispered. The madman nodded and said, If the death of the human emperor is really related to the Dragon King and the other two, then would the purple gold divine dragon also be sealed in the land of buried gods by them? Maybe. Qin Feiyang sighed. To tell the truth, even if it was the purple gold divine dragon sealed by the Dragon King and the other two, he was powerless now. Moreover, the meaning of the Feather Emperor was also very obvious. He didn't want him to intervene in this matter. Irritating. Let's go to the Black Tortoise world. The madman waved his hand. The more he thought about it, the more his head hurt. At the same time, the Western continent, Southern continent, Northern continent, and Eastern continent were also discussing at this moment. No one knew about the appearance of the Sky Bell, because no one dared to set foot on the Sky Cloud Island. And because the Sky Cloud Island was located in the center of the Sky Cloud Sea, the sea beasts in all directions were extremely powerful. No one had the strength to get close to the Sky Cloud Island through these sea beasts. However, when the Sky Bell appeared, all the creatures in the Sky Cloud realm heard it clearly. At first, no one paid attention to it and only thought that it was a loud sound caused by someone fighting. But slowly they realized that their friends and relatives, no matter how far away they were, could hear this loud sound. They immediately realized that this matter wasn't simple. Because of this, the 4 continents gradually boiled over. Relatively speaking, ordinary people were at most curious. But the Demon Palace, Rogue Cultivator Alliance, Heavenly Palace, and Deity Palace, these super forces fell into a tense and uneasy atmosphere. Because they had time and space transmission divine tools, and people who mastered the laws of time and space, their forces were spread across the continents, so naturally the news came faster. Moreover, because of their relationship with Qin Feiyang and the others, they also had some understanding of the situation of the various forbidden areas, so they couldn't help but start to guess whether this was related to the 4 forbidden areas. Did something big happen again? Just as everyone was investigating the truth, another shocking news spread across the 4 continents. The land of buried gods, the Death Glacier, the Een Devil Land and the Heavy Region. These 4 forbidden areas, one after another, a group of powerhouses emerged one after another. These people all had monstrous strength and ignored the rules of the forbidden areas. As soon as they appeared, they forcibly expelled the adventurers in the 4 forbidden areas and gave the order to seal the forbidden areas. Seal the forbidden areas? This was the first time they had encountered such a thing. What exactly happened? After hearing this news, the giants of the 4 major forces pondered for a moment, and immediately thought of Qin Feiyang and the others. This matter was definitely related to Qin Feiyang and the others. Even if it wasn't related, they must know the truth. Therefore, one by one, they prepared to send a message to Qin Feiyang. But at this moment, they were the first to receive Qin Feiyang's message. Sea Lion Island. Space-time tunnels appeared one after another. Demon Hall. Elder Hua, Chu Yin Demon Hall's Hall Master. Rogue Cultivator Alliance. Alliance Master, Vice Alliance Master, Hall of Famers. Temple of Gods. Hizhongtian. Heavenly Palace. 3 giants. One by one, the supergiants who controlled a region arrived one after another. You're all here. The Heavenly Palace's Hall Master looked at Elder Hua and the others and smiled. Why is the Heavenly Palace here too? The Vice Alliance Master glanced at the 3 giants of the Heavenly Palace and frowned slightly. It's obvious that the Heavenly Palace has also joined Qin Feiyang. The woman chuckled and looked at the Vice Alliance Master and the Hall of Famers. She said enviously, Old man Yi, Old man Qi, don't deny it. You've really picked up a great bargain. What bargain? The 2 of them were suspicious. Still playing dumb? The woman looked at them in disdain and said indifferently, Of course it's your 2 disciples. Oh, so that's what you're talking about. The Vice Alliance Master came to a realization and said proudly, There's nothing we can do about it. We can only blame ourselves for having such good taste. The woman rolled her eyes and asked, You should know about the situation in the various forbidden regions and the loud noise that appeared not long ago, right? Yes. Everyone nodded. Then what's going on? The woman was suspicious. I don't know. Everyone shook their heads. Buzz. Another space-time tunnel appeared in the sky. Qin Feiyang and the white-eyed wolf walked out. Qin Feiyang looked at Elder Hua and the others below and smiled apologetically. Sorry for making everyone wait. It's fine. Elder Hua waved his hand. Qin Feiyang smiled and landed in front of the Vice Alliance Master. He bowed and said, Disciple greets Master. Good, good, good. The Vice Alliance Master smiled happily. With such an outstanding disciple, how could he not be happy? Qin Feiyang glanced at the various giants and said with a smile, I know that you will definitely send me a message one by one. So in order not to waste time, I called all of you here and told you all at once. At the same time, I also want you all to be mentally prepared. Mentally prepared? Everyone looked at each other. Why did these words make people unconsciously start to feel nervous after hearing them? Say it. Elder Hua said. Soon, there will be a time called the Divine Kingdom that will come to our Sky Cloud realm. Qin Feiyang explained the situation of the Divine Kingdom, and the battle between the Sky Cloud realm and the Divine Kingdom in detail. Moreover, these people in front of him could be trusted, so he didn't hide the situation of the Human Emperor, the Feather Emperor, and the Land of Buried Gods. He only didn't reveal the fact that Qin Batian was the Human Emperor's son. What? There's actually such a thing? When the group of giants heard this, they were shocked. It was simply beyond their imagination. If it wasn't from Qin Feiyang's mouth, they wouldn't believe it even if they were beaten to death. That you're tuning in to the Li Mei's Wuxia Whispers YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.